cash money. Fuck a 9 to 5, I be after fast money. Don't try and catch up, you end up a crash dump. Cause I'm just playing the sand and life bad for me. Ain't have a handout when I was down bad struggling. Got off my ass in the trap, right back hustling. Few hours in the spot, right back bubbling. Little funk in there, but that ain't nothing. Fuck it, boy, I be getting it, no days off. I'm trying to get filthy rich, young, black, and militant. Different than niggas claiming that they with this shit. Cause the difference since I'm living it. Boston Vita was sir, you and your people. My gang cop heavy like Bossy and Al Pacino. We let the loud and D go. If it'll bring C-notes, just know these young niggas gon' stack chips like Pringles. I done had fucked up days and bad nights. It took a few L's trying to get my cash right. I can't slow down, I'm caught up in this fast life. And I ain't going home till I catch my last bite. These bitches mad trife, these niggas don't act right. I bet that AR make that ass act right. I've been trill and I've been living a savage life. Bagging white, trying to be rich in the afterlife, nigga.
All right, peace, family. Y'all already see what it is. I got my brother Chuck Morgan tuned in with us tonight. You know what I mean? On the late night, midnight build. Y'all already know how we do over here. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. You know what I mean? We've been trying to make sure this happened. We've been working on it for the last about 2 weeks. I had asked, well, maybe 3 weeks ago, I asked Chuck to come do an interview. And so he been working as he can to try to put this build together for y'all and just have a decent conversation over here. So what's going on with you, Chuck?
Everything is good, brother. Everything is everything. Yeah, just trying to relax, you know. It's only about just a little before 7 o'clock, so, you know, I figured I'd take some time out. Trying to stay busy and at the same time keep up on this thing. Peace, everybody. My two loves, Kevin T's. Peace. What's happening, everybody?
Yeah, they showing. They was waiting for you.
Oh yeah, it's you know, I've been still trying behind the scenes do my thing, you know, just dealing with a lot of other things here locally, you know, economics, you know, just trying to make things better life, you know, here, and things have been moving up and up. So it's just now I got to bring it down to where I can spend the time necessary to try to keep this, you know, keep this stuff going, keep some of the information rolling, and not get so caught up that it, you know, fades out. But yeah, everything's good. Everything's real good.
Yeah, that's
what I was hoping that you would be able to do is if you can retrieve some of those videos, like the one on the Biru and or anything along that line. Hey, Nuwana.
Yeah,
I see you.
Yeah, I can definitely. Let me see. Give me 1 second. Which one did you want me to play first?
That was the one. Is Nibiru a spacecraft?
All right. Let me see. Let me go grab it. Are these? Could you send me 2 of them? Okay, you said this is the video. Okay, so it must be the second one. The first one is okay. The first one, okay. One is a video and one is an article. My fault.
Okay, yeah. The articles, yeah. Okay, that was another one. But yeah, the video was one that we did a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of goes into that whole issue head on. And it's not just exclusively dealing with Nuwaupians per se, but it really goes into anyone that follows or believes in that whole Nibiru ideology, particularly with the people from Zechariah Sitchin's followers, because I usually get into it with them on that issue, and usually they have some good concepts, but when it gets down to for them to show and prove, where a lot of the stuff that that Sitchin was talking, they just can't do it. And the same applies to the Nuwaupians because, you know, York was following Sitchin's MO, and they're just lost in the soup. And that's why they're just running in multiple directions trying to find anything to jive with that belief system.
Right.
And you know, since York has been arrested, you know, since he's been locked down, that whole Nibiru thing has just dropped. They don't even talk about it anymore. You know, because it was believed that York was supposed to be the pilot that was supposed to drive one of the Nibiru crafts out. One of because you know, that was one of the things that he mentions in the book Jesus Found in Egypt, where in a sense he was making the reference, I don't remember what page it's on, but he was talking about how one of the Egyptian solar boats was in fact Nibiru, and that Michael or Tahuti would be driving it. And of course, York claims himself to be Tahuti, the serpent of Genesis and the pilot of Nibiru, because he even talks about how he came here on his craft, Nibiru. I know, Tawana is a pilot. Yeah, he's a pilot. So, man, you know, wherever you want to start, you know, we can go. Since this is face to face, kind of give people a chance to, you know, get a feel of where I'm coming from with this thing, why I'm doing what I'm doing, how I came across all this stuff. You know, if it even gets to that level.
Okay, but, yeah. I got it pulled up, the first video, and I'm gonna go ahead and play it.
Cool.
All right, you'll be able to hear it too.
All right.
You can't handle the truth.
Let me know when the video ends because I can't see it on my screen.
Okay, I got you.
Can you pick up? Am I live now? I mean, the audio is it still?
Yeah, you still live.
No, I mean, can you still hear me in the?
Yeah, they can still. Yeah, they can still hear you.
Okay.
But I know y'all have seen the fall and rise of a great nation. This is 3 years. Like the good Lord said, destroy the temple, and I will raise it again in 3 years. We're at that time, so the children of Wu-Nuwaup will be heard. We've been a sacred society for 25 years now. Now it's time for people to know what we can keep in secret. As I mentioned earlier, you know, that they're turning the clocks back tonight. 10 seconds. Thank you very much. 10 seconds. And this is the 9th time they've done that. And they're doing that because the planet is out of alignment. The planet is slowing up. As you know, the period is already in place. The countdown for 2000 is in. The world is in uproar.
Yes, there is no such thing as planet Nibiru or whatever they say. It's just fiction, and they cite sources that cite NASA sources. They don't cite NASA. Check the websites, you'll see, and it's all related to the doomsday predictions of the year 2012. Yes, that's what you're getting at. That's behind your question, isn't it? Yes. 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 You want to know if the world is going to end on December 21st, 2012. Because the same website that tells you about Planet X, this secret planet that has a strongly elliptical orbit that will come into our zone in 2012 and knock Earth off its axis, combined with, on December 21st, 2012, that the center of the galaxy, the sun and the Earth, will come into perfect alignment, and the excess gravity will then also tip Earth off its axis, and it'll be end of the world as we know it. This is what these web pages will tell you. Turns out, if you go to December 21st and look at the star charts, it's true. The center of the galaxy, the sun and the Earth, will come into perfect alignment. It will. It's true. It's true. What the site does not tell you is that that happens every year on December 21st. They left that out of the account. So it's a fun work of fiction. Earth will be here before, during, and after 2012. I will add that the movie 2012 that's being marketed right now, that's going to come out in 2012, and they want you to do all the homework for the movie. So they say, just Google it. And if you Google 2012, it's filled with thousands of web pages on Doomsday, written by people who didn't take enough science in school. So you Google it. I saw some of the previews for it, and I was worried that we would, all of us in this business would just be inundated with having to sort of correct misconceptions. And then I saw what they actually show in the movie. And the movie's like, aliens come, and they take over the Capitol. And I said, oh, that's just another sort of, like the movie Independence Day. And that's fine. It's just Hollywood.
Shit, hold on. All right, so that the video over, Chuck.
Okay.
Oh, that's a whole nother one right there. All right, so
if you have some questions on this thing, or some of the people did, yeah, by all means, you can go there.
All right. Give me 1 second.
Can they hear me?
Yeah, they can hear you. Yep.
Okay.
So basically, what I want to ask is, so basically the teachings of Nibiru, when it comes to when we talking about Nuwaupians, it was something that was taken from stitching. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of crazy different things about Zachariah stitching as well, like dealing with a whole lot of other stuff, but and it kind of like goes along with some of the things you hear about Dr. York.
Well, I don't know that much about him, personally, but as far as his doctrine is concerned, it's flawed, it's weak, it's pseudo, and York should have known better. Now, whether or not York knew it was pseudo, time will tell. But for the record, York followed along the Earth Chronicles series for a long time,
right?
For a very long time, and made millions off of that book series, his own. He made millions out of those publications, the Supreme Mathematics series, the Right Knowledge series. All of that culminated into the Holy Tablets and the Black Book.
Now, what's the Black Book?
The Black Book was a book that York released shortly after the Holy Tablets, which was supposed to be another level of outformation, the doctrine, which centered more on York's rendition of Egyptology.
So that's our dealing with Zachariah Stitching. So are we saying like York took or hijacked his teachings of Egyptology from Zechariah Sitchin as well?
Well, here's the thing. Up until about 1990, York wasn't even dealing with this type of stuff. All he was going off of was that he was the embodiment of Melchizedek, and that he was from the 19th galaxy, and it was a very vague narrative. It wasn't until early 1990s that he started upgrading the idea of he being an extraterrestrial, and then he started biting off of Zechariah Sitchin. As a matter of fact, one of the earlier audio recordings was back then it were tapes or CDs. It was called "Who Were the People Before the Adam and Eve Story," and in that class, York started reiterating word for word Zechariah Sitchin's doctrine, but making it look like it was coming from him. It was another level of plagiarism, yeah. And in that, York did one of the best jobs. It's still online. You can pull it up, even if you were to search it now. Who Were the People Before the Adam and Eve Story? When you pull that up, you'll hear York giving the best rendition of Zechariah Sitchin's Earth Chronicles series, where he talks about Nibiru it didn't come through, but a smaller shams came through, and that there were four force fields that smashed into a planet in between Mars and Jupiter, I think it was. I'm sorry, not Mars and Jupiter. I forget which it was, but it was supposed to be a planet that York called Meldic, which he got from Sitchin, and that once it was smashed into by one of the four winds, which was supposed to be one of the force fields, that it created the asteroid belt. So this is York's way, by way of Sitchin, to fill in some of the gaps or their belief of how these things came to be. So they're using that, and they're saying that it was in the Sumerian literature that is where this is documented. Nowhere does Zechariah Sitchin cite a primary source, nor does he give any example from a primary source of any of the things that he says in the Earth Chronicles series, and naturally York didn't, because York was following behind Sitchin. And so in some of the articles, just like with this video, what I tried to do was go to actual text and linguistic translations of what some of the texts that talk about Nibiru and what it was, and it's universally accepted by way of the Mesopotamians on what it was, and it in no way, shape, or form has anything to do with a spaceship or the Anunnaki being inside, on board, or anything like that. So it's just a completely bogus concept by Sitchin, who made millions off of that book series, because he had his books translated in almost 36 languages. And they sold out each time he put a book out since 1976 on until the last of the Earth Chronicles series, which was The Ending of Days. And then he put another book out called the Book of Enki. So he put a heavy emphasis on the public's lack of knowledge of Mesopotamian history, language, and culture, and made millions off of it, just like York did.
Wow. So when we talking about the Anunnaki, explain a little bit to the people who the Anunnaki were supposed to be, where these teachings come from, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. In a nutshell, Anunna, which is what the Sumerians regarded these various deities that were connected with various stars as well. And in the Akkadian text, they are taking bits and pieces from Sumer, because the Akkadians adopted Sumerian culture and language, and you can also find Sumerian dictionaries where you had Akkadian on one side and the Sumerian on the other. And they regarded them as being deities, or, if you will, gods of various elements. The god of the underworld, god of the sky. These were deities that were considered scientists. These are like anthropomorphic groupings that they had fixed various names to. So we have, if you use Ki was also identified as being like the underworld. So when you have Anunnaki, Anunna would be like the gods, and then you had multiples of them. Then you had the lesser deities or a lesser Anunna, which were Agigi, which York would have them being some type of spiritual, spooky type of creature. You see? So these Anunna of the upper world and the lower world, and then you had the head of one group, you had Anki, or Inki. Anki, and you had Enlil, you have Anu. These will all be encompassed within that pile of Anunna. And Anunna is the Sumerian term, and the various other renditions of it, Anutu, to the Akkadians and other like Babylonians, they would refer to them as Anunnaki, depending on whether or not they would be of the upper or lower world.
So these Anunnakis, because I done heard young Pharaoh talk about the Anunnaki. I done heard a lot of people who claim to be scholars and teach about this Anunnaki situation. Now I know you've been around like the whole conscious community for quite some time. As far as your recollection, when was the first time, or who would you say would be the person who introduced this Anunnaki talk to the conscious community?
Dr. York. in a nutshell, yeah. He was the one that made it popular. But this, again, Zecharia Sitchin, in his 12th Planet book from 1976, when it was released, he was the one who, in those little booklets, made it popular, because it was a eye-catching story that these Sumerian deities were actually the creators, and that this is where elements of biblical text trace its origins. And so York, back in the 1990s, he was the one who pushed that narrative. And as we would go out in the streets talking to people and trying to sell the publications, we would start elaborating on Anunnaki. And so as York became more and more popular, he began to add on stories that went outside of Zecharia Sitchin's realm and started giving new things. So when, as like Zecharia Sitchin would say that, well, the Anunnaki had to come to this planet to mine for gold, to take back to their dwindling atmosphere on Nibiru. Okay, so what York did was he just flipped it around a little bit and started saying that, well, the Anunnaki came to Earth from his planet called Risk, and then had to mine for gold to take back to the planet Risk. And then that Enki, who was head of the mining operation, started wearing the gold. And he then started taking the gold for himself, and that he was exiled of sorts.
Because he wanted to wear the gold.
Yeah. And there was a good book that was released by a young lady named Donna Cossey. She put out 2 books, and her first book was called Kooks, which York was in one of those publications because of his kooky ideas and his kooky doctrine. Then she released another book called Strange Creations, Abhorrent Ideas of Human Origins from Ancient Astronauts to Aquatic Apes. And in that publication, I'm going to pull it up, she makes an interesting synopsis on Zecharia Sitchin and York. She says, many of the ideas in York's text are lifted almost word for word from Sitchin with a Nubian twist. York reveals that he traveled here by a small passenger craft called a sham. Sitchin had written that the Nephilim spaceships were called Shem. Now I'm reading this quoting her from her book on page 28. York says it takes the Anunnaki 3,600 years to travel to Earth, and that the orbit is called a shar. Sitchin had argued that it took the Nephilim 3,600 years to travel to Earth, the orbit of the planet Murdoch, which the Sumerians called a shar. But now that he, York, has been exposed to Zecharia Sitchin, York embraces an entirely new theology and, of course, a new name. His angelic name, Yanun, is replaced by Marduk, Michael, or Melchizedek. Many of the ideas in York's texts are lifted almost word for word from Sitchin. And York, what is this? Okay, I kind of went over it. And in York's version, where it says that the Shams, York says that it takes the Anunnaki 3,600 years. In York's version, however, the gods or Anunnaki came not from Marduk, but from the 8th planet Risk in the 19th galaxy, Ilion. An elite, woolly-haired race of beings, the Anunnaki created Homo sapiens and now travel throughout the galaxy by way of a planet ship named Nibiru, or the Mothership. That's on page 28 of Donna Cassi's book. And she's right, because this is exactly what York was teaching. I'll give you an example. In a book by Zecharia Sitchin called Genesis Revisited, Is Modern Science Catching Up to Ancient Knowledge? Chapter 1, The Host of Heaven, page 19. And this is where it says, planet of the crossing was neither Mars nor Jupiter, as some scholars have debated, but another planet that passes between them every 3,600 years that gave rise to my first book titled The 12th Planet. The planet, which is the 12th member of the solar system, although technically it is a planet, only the 10th. Now, reading this, York, it says that after reading this, I was convinced that Zecharia Sitchin was making it up. The Sumerian text called it Nibiru. All anyone has to do is check and see what it is. Okay. So, in the Holy Tablets, in chapter 1, tablet 584 through 85, York says something very similar, in which is what Donna had pointed out, that on 84, the orbit that Nibiru was originally on was a 25,920-year orbit called AMS. It shifted into a new orbit of 3,600 year called a Shar, and this orbit was caught in the solar system always to make a return. Again, none of this stuff is found on any primary text. There are no Sumerian writings anywhere that mentions Nibiru coming through every 25,920 years on an Am, nor 3,600 years called the Shar. So again, this is coming from Zecharia Sitchin's writings from the 12th planet and all the subsequent publications that came from that. And particularly what I was quoting was Genesis Revisited, page 19, and York reiterates the same thing because the Holy Tablets was just a mass of plagiarized writings from multiple sources. And in one of his most favorite persons to plagiarize was Zecharia Sitchin.
That's crazy.
He was the one who made it popular among black folk. Because this is something that white folk have been into for years. Because Zecharia Sitchin was a very popular person, especially in some of the old shows they used to come on called Coast to Coast AM, where they talk loosely about interplanetary travel, extraterrestrial, paranormal occurrences, etc. And Zecharia Sitchin would on occasion be interviewed by George Norrie or I can't remember the other guy who was a popular host on that show. And it was a PhD professor named Michael Heiser, who later came on the scene and kind of took Zecharia Sitchin to task by challenging him to prove what he says. And that's pretty much what sparked me to kind of go into this topic, because I did contact Michael Heiser and we talked, and he gave some information on certain things, And that was how I was able to, when my first questions in the website, it was based around some of the questions that Mike had gave, and kind of try to link that in and show some of the inconsistencies and showing how where York was taking directly from Zecharia Sitchin as opposed to coming from any ancient text. I'll give you an example. First of all, it has to be made clear and known that the ancient Sumerians and Akkadians, these astronomers, the people who charted, because they were charting not with telescopes or anything like that, they were using naked eye astronomy. And they were only able to chart, because they charted these planets or stars move, as well as the sun, the moon, etc. And in one of the Babylonian texts known as Wu-Nuwaup in the Osturi B, these are astronomical texts in Sumerian cuneiform or Akkadian cuneiform, or even Babylonian cuneiform. So here we have, it's documented by way of the ancients that they only charted 5 planets: Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. And it's Zecharia Sitchin and them guys, along with York, who started coming up with a Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. He would refer to one planet that is not even mentioned by the Sumerians or any of the other Mesopotamians. He referred to as Meldic, which York called Vulcan. And then he referred to Uranus as Anu, Neptune as Ea, and Pluto as Usmi, or what they used to call Gaga. You will only find this in Zecharia Sitchin's books. Yet York used, and this shows you clearly that York was following behind Sitchin, because York in his holy tablets, he's using the exact same names, deity name affixed on planets that he got from Sitchin.
Damn. So when you brought up, you named a few people. You named Melchizedek, you named Michael, and then you named some other individuals as well. All of these people are supposed to fit the same person. Like we talking about. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. That's what York did. All right. I'm back in the chat. I'm reading the chat too. I'm going to say Alan Chuck learned it from him too. Of course. Wait a minute. What did I learn? Hold on. I'm going to get back to your question, Amadi. But you said Chuck learned it from him. What did I learn from York? I learned to be okay. I see. Okay. Never mind. All right. So
that's Dawood. That's that the dancing. They call him the dancing Wu-Nuwaupian.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He called in my show a couple of times.
Dancing. Okay, I probably.
He was, matter of fact, remember he was talking crazy on the when we did the introduction and they brought him in and y'all was wondering who he was. Remember?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's him.
I remember. Okay. Now, okay. So getting back to your question, yeah, Melchizedek, Michael, and Marduk. Okay. It was in the 1990s that York took on the personification of Marduk. And matter of fact, we even all had to cut our hair and wear this little one braid in the back of our head because we saw York wearing it, and York said that it was a Murdoch braid. And that was around the same time that the sisters had to shave all their hair off and wear one long braid with beads on it, referred to as a Ninti braid, which was supposed to be the chief scientist that was supposed to have been conducting an experiment to create human beings, who they referred to as Mother Ninti. So the braid that the sisters had to wear was based on that, and we wore the Murdoch braid. So York, taking on that personification, tried to link because of phonetics, or just saying because Murdoch has a pronunciation with an M, Melchizedek an M, Michael an M, and therefore it's all tied in. and that's just not the way it is. And then he would also at times refer to himself as Wu-Nuwaup, because that was the name that the Akkadians regarded Marduk as well. And of course, there are multiple Babylonian texts that speak about Marduk and his history, and how they regarded him. He was such such a high influential character that he was referred to as the supreme deity. You see, so Wu-Nuwaup was just another name because Utu was the name of the sun to the Babylonians as well. So you have, like you would find in the book of Psalms, they refer to the Lord God is a sun, and then they use the term in Hebrew, they'll use Shemesh, and Shemesh was just another name that was used because that was one of the names in the Code of Hammurabi. But Utu was another name for Marduk, Wu-Nuwaup. And ironically, York used that to identify with the pseudo three suns that's supposed to be surrounding his planetary orbit, which was Utu, Apsu, and Shemesh. You see? So yeah, that's how York was able to try to tie it all in by making himself the supreme within everything. If he's either being Melchizedek, he'll be the highest of all the angels. Michael, the highest of all the angels. He would be the grandson of Enki. The grandson of Anu, making himself as being the highest on earth. You know, just like he said that when a person we all went down to Tamaray, and this was when the Ramesses dance club was open. You know, the night before we had our little Halloween bash, and then the next morning we would have class in the hall.
Right.
And so when the brother had asked the question about he being how did he feel about Enki, and then York gets up there and starts talking about how he rejects everything that Enki stands for because Enki opposed Anu. You know, and by doing that, he's just leaving us, the audience, and saying, well, damn, it must be true. He's able to elaborate on Anu, and then he's dissing Enki and still upholding the honors of Anu. All this stuff is just pseudo. It's this complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense, man. But he was able to do it because at that time, we didn't have access to a lot of the primary sources that are now available by way of various universities, various Assyriologists, Sumerologists, and other historians who have placed their works into databases that the general public is able to take the time out and really investigate these ancient stories, not only in translation, but you'll have transliterations, and then they even have databases where you can just look at a Sumerian determinative, and then you can start looking for key words in a cuneiform text. You see, and then you become familiar with it. I became familiar because people say, well, you got all this stuff dealing with the Sumerian doctrine from Dr. York, and all this stuff about cuneiform. No, my first, the first time I ever learned about cuneiform was ironically watching an episode of Gilligan's Island. There was an episode with the professor. Well, Gilligan finds some tablets on the beach, and the professor looks at it and says that these are cuneiform writings. And he's going through this task throughout the show to try to decipher what is being said in the cuneiform text on a way as a means to get off of the island. So at the end of the episode, it is explained that the Sumerians were one of the earliest people to develop writing, and they use these cuneiform characters. This is giving a short breakdown of what the cuneiform was, and that he just was reading the cuneiform backwards. He talked about how to get on the island as opposed to getting off. It was a big thing, and that was my first indoctrination into what cuneiform was even about. And as we were going, because I've only heard York mention cuneiform only once, and that was on an audio called "Which Resurrection Is Yours," where York is having a semi-debate with a Christian fellow, and he's talking about various languages, and he mentions cuneiform. And by the time he starts releasing the first publications on this, that was when it all came back to me that, oh, I remember the cuneiform thing, and that's why I was already familiar with it at that point.
Let me ask you this. Is there any ancient text that talks about Planet Risk?
No.
All right.
No.
So is there any?
No. Planet
Go ahead.
Risk, because I remember when he had to learn it. And risk is an seeing sunflower seed. Somebody's asking, what's that noise? Risk is taken from an Arabic word, which is supposed to be one of the 99 attributes of Allah, Ar-Razaku, the provider. And Risk was one of the planets that was a place that provided. So York took an Arabic word and affixed it to a planet that was supposed to predate Arabic and the Earth itself. And that's how he came about with the planet Risk. Because in addition to the planet Risk, he also affixed the Arabic word Ilion, or Ilion, and identified it as a place, as being the 19th galaxy. So the 19th galaxy to York was Ilion, that we find in the Quran. And Nuwaupians and York himself will use that as a straw man argument to tie you up from having to support your evidence of this place called Risk. Because York would say that Risk is a physical place, not nothing spiritual, and that Ilion is a real and physical place as well. So that was his whole thing, is that all that he was saying on that was that it was real, true, and these are actual places. Wow. So no, there's no primary source. There's no documented history of a planet called Risk. That is solely a York ideology, and that was something that we all taught.
Now what about anything? I mean, because I'm just trying to figure out how he was teaching like that about Nibiru. Is there anything that he can cite besides Stitching about Nibiru?
Okay, now, granted, in the Akkadian text of Enuma Elish, which was the epic that speaks about the battle with Tiamat and Marduk, and in that text, it mentions Nibiru. It literally mentions Nibiru. But what had happened is they started, just like a Sitchin, they began to come up with alternatives to the story to try to support or fill into something that didn't exist. So it would speak about Nibiru as being a planet that crosses, or it represented a position in the sky, because Nibiru was seen at certain times of the year consistently. Now, if you want to say 360 days after its first sighting, you can. But 3,600 years, you cannot. because there is nothing that supports that.
Wow.
So that was be one of the references, because it's in Tablet 7, lines 26 through 27, where it says, he, Nibiru, is the one who holds the turning point, the crossing point, the junction, and they must look to him. That's one of the few references that is made in the Enuma Elish in regards to Nibiru.
So he also points to some type of mining going on as far as this mining for gold. Is there any archaeological evidence that that
these questions? All right.
I mean, because I'm just saying, if it's a mining, like basically, where is you getting this from? Is there archaeological findings?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay. First of all, again, this is Zechariah Sitchin's narrative. York just takes it and adds on to it, because again, York's publications weren't placed in prominent bookstores like Sitchin's books were. So York can plagiarize and not worry about having any kind of issues. And his books was specifically geared to a small population, which was us. So a lot of the things York just was not checked on. So I'm in going to that whole thing pertaining to the gold. In one of the earlier Patarak publications, or Actual Fact, I think it was Actual Fact number 12. It's called Enki as Creator. York talks about, let me see if I can read them. All right. It says that about Anunnaki, Pad Naziru, Ha Elohim. The gods were complaining about having to work the mines for the Nud gold in Abzu, South Africa, as being too difficult. Now, granted, there are some ufologists that speak about gold being found in various mines in South Africa. I think one they refer to as Maladapa. But somehow York would take that and then flip it and make it look like it's talking about something that's found in an ancient Sumerian text, because they consistently said in the Sumerian doctrine, but nowhere in Sumerian doctrine or literature is there mentioning of a mining for gold. The closest thing that they have is what's found in Atrahasis, which is as like a continuation of the Epic of Gilgamesh, because the Atrahasis was also a flood story, and it's a creation story as well. And in the tablet 1, lines 21 and 25, it talks about the gods were digging water courses, canals they opened, the life of the land. The Igigi were digging water cresses, canals they opened, the life of the land. The Igigi gods dug the Tigris River and the Euphrates thereafter. And that's one translation from Benjamin R. Foster, Assyriologist, 1993. Then we have Stephanie Dali, who's a non-Sumerian Assyriologist, but she had a similar translation where she said the gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The gods dug out the Tigris River and dug out the Euphrates, and that was from her paper, her dissertation paper in 1991. And then Assyriologist W.G. Lambert in 1969 mentions the following. After Anu had ascended to the heavens and Enki had ascended to the watery abyss, Apsu, the 7 great divinities imposed labor on the other deities. They dug the Tigris Euphrates rivers to supply life-giving water to the land. So here we have 3 translations, which have the general same thing, that the Igigi or the Igigu that the Acadians say, were forced to do the work of digging out water crescences and digging up the Tigris and Euphrates. These didn't happen, but these are stories and myths that the scribes had written in epic poems. And so we have York saying that this happened in South Africa. Well, the gold mining took place in South Africa, but you don't find anything mentioned. He doesn't cite any source, any primary source that connects that with anything. It doesn't connect at all. So in Atrahasis tablet 1, line 35 and 40, it says, the vast marsh, they counted years of drudgery and 40 years too much. Forced labor they bore night and day. They were complaining, denouncing, muttering down in the ditch, let us face up to the foreman, the perfect. He must take off our heavy burden. He must take off the heavy burden upon us. Again, this is in the Atrahasis, and this in that epic, it talks about how Enlil, because the Igigi were complaining about the arduous task of the arduous task of digging out the canals, that he just as soon destroyed them in a flood to wipe out their noise because it disturbed their sleep. That's the gist of the story. Wow. And Atrahasis is one who was a hero in the epic because he was able to survive, and that goes into a similarity with the Noah story as well as with the Epic of Gilgamesh. So my point in that is that nowhere do we find any reference to the Anunnaki, Anuna, Igigi, anyone mining for gold. And there are more than enough examples coming from Sumerian literature that mentions gold, but never in one instance is it mentioned as being something that was mined for by way of the Igigu, or Anunnaku, or Anuna. The term, the Sumerian term that's used, you'll find it in the Sumerian text called Enki and Ninhursag. That's in line 1, tablet 1, line 111-49, where it says that, may the land of Turkish hand over to you gold from Harali, lapis lazuli, and may the land of Maluha load precious, desirable cornians, mess, wood of Megan, and the best other wood into large ships for you. Now, this is found in the largest database of known Sumerian literature that is released through Oxford University, called the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature. So nowhere, ever even once, does York have or cite a primary source to support the idea that the Anunnaki mined for gold. Neither does Zechariah Sitchin.
All right, so let me ask this. Somebody in the chat room wanted me to ask you about the Sumerian kings list.
Right. What about it?
They just say ask about the Sumerian kings list. Is there anything that deals with the Sumerian kings list as it relates to Nuwaupians?
No, because the Nuwaupians never cite the Sumerian kings list.
Right.
Nor did York.
Maybe whoever it is, maybe they'll say why they wanted me to ask you that. All right, so in this, I want to ask this. So, because I never got a clear understanding on what or who.
Oh, I think I know. I think I know what they're talking about. Because years ago, I remember they were we were in different groups arguing with the Nuwaupians, and they would use a straw man argument to try to justify Nibiru coming through every 3,600 years. So in the Sumerian kings list, they give a multiple of years I pulled it up. It's after the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Iridug. In Iridug, Elulim became king. He ruled for 28,800 years. Alihar ruled for 3,600 years. Two kings. They ruled for 6,480 years, etc., etc., etc. I don't know if that's what the person in the chat was making reference to in regards to the 3,600, but as I was telling the persons that we were in the debate with, none of this supports the notion of Nibiru on a 3,600 year orbit, because again, this only goes back to Zechariah Sitchin.
This is what it is. They were saying about talking about how long it was and saying it was ended with, and it had African names all through it.
Well, I would agree with them on that, because some of the pre-Renaissance Sumerians, I mean, these were Kushite people. These were African peoples, and many linguists have been able to find elements of Emigir or Sumerian language. You'll find traces of African language in Sumerian pre-Renaissance Sumer. And when I say pre-Renaissance, because there were various periods where you can see the changing of the peoples, because there was a Renaissance period where you'll see during the Gulam reign, where you see most of the artifacts, where you see the guys with the big eyes and the pale skin, blue eyes with their hands clasped, and they look pretty much European, and that it was during that period, and that was more during the Renaissance period, because in most cases they regarded the Sumerians as a society that eventually just vanished. When by the time Sargon the Great comes in, they adopt many of the culture of the Sumer, the people of Sumer, the Sagiga, or blackhead people, and elements of the language was also grafted into Akkadian, because Akkadian is known linguistically as being the very first of the Semitic languages. And because Emigir or Sumerian is not a Semitic language, you'll see elements of it in Akkadian, because the Akkadians did graft in Sumerian terms and words. So if you go to the Pennsylvania Sumerian Dictionary, the electronic Pennsylvania Sumerian Dictionary, whenever you put in a word search, you'll pull up various Sumerian words, and then you'll see the Akkadian term that's also used, and you'll see how there are some words that you do find that the Akkadians did adopt. So to answer that, yeah, you will find African words that are similar, because yeah, these were Kushite people as well. These were African people as well.
Okay.
Because remember, I think it was even Dr. What was his name? Dr. Salim Faragi was making that point. I remember he was on Sarnetta's show, and he was talking about how, you know, the people of the Nile Valley, how many of them migrated from various parts of Africa through the Sahelian land bridge, the Sahel, and filled in the Nile Valley, as well as in Mesopotamia as well. Mm. And this is documented, because even some of the earlier linguists had to use various forms of morphology and syntax to show a similarity in and how to decipher Sumerian literature by way of various African languages. Congo, what's it? Congo. What is those Congo languages?
Congolese?
Bantu, not Bantu, Congolese. I forget which one. I mean, let me see if I could pull it up, because I do remember looking at that as I was going over that myself. But if I'm able to pull it up again, I'll present it. Or I might even do an article on it, because there are some books written about it, because that's an area, believe it or not, that's an area that a lot of people, a lot of us, because a lot of us put a heavy emphasis on Kemetic or Egyptian language and literature, and there's an empty field of African-centered Sumerologists or Assyriologists. Unfortunately, that's a field that's dominated by the Europeans, Germans as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between Sumer and Sumeria?
Well, it's just more like a language thing as far as phonetics, because you have Sumer. That is the general name of that place where you have ancient Sumerians, Sumer. Mm-hmm. Then you have Samaria, which is a group of Israelites that live just outside of Tel Aviv, which they have a similar sound to when people say Samaria. They have also a similar sounding to Sumerians, the Sumerians. And in the book of Matthew, when Jesus says, "Go not into the way of the Gentiles, nor the people of Samaria," sometimes people can get the two confused. Samaria and Sumer. That's it. Bantu, yeah. Bantu, yeah. That's a similar language that you'll find in some of the early Sumerian literature, certain words, and then of course you'll find it in various elements in Akkadian.
So
Bantu Congo, yeah. Go ahead.
So I want to ask this then: how old would you say that this civilization is?
Well, they don't have an actual date naturally. It's like we don't have a natural a date on the ancient Egyptians.
Right.
They generally you would just say thousands of years old.
Okay.
Because they don't have any text that says that upon this day we take dominion of this region in the year so and so and so and so. So they will base it on what they discover in the form of writing, because a lot of the writings that you find that's been discovered and translated, much of it deals very little. It deals very little with this stuff about Anunnaki, and it's only like I think 100 citations or texts that deal with Anuna and anything pertaining to that. Most of it is dealing with astronomy, dealing with taxes, medicine, architecture, just day-to-day life of the people of Sumer. But because Zachariah Sitchin made it popular, and because anytime you put in a Google search on Sumerian, anything, is usually going to be something pseudo is going to pop up.
Right. So when you was talking about this 3,600 years or whatever, 3,600 years, what did York teach about? And I want to say, let's just say York and Zachariah Sitchin, what were they teaching about the 3,600 years? What was supposed to happen?
Well, you see, that was the thing. York was saying that every 3,600 years, Nibiru would make itself known or make its appearance, but it was too big to fit within this within the Earth's atmosphere. So in turn, they would send out smaller crafts called shams. And the last time that they came through, one of the shams smashed into Meldic, and another one smashed into a portion of the Earth, sawing off part of it. So old Earth was it was 3 times the size as it is now. But because one of the shams came through, one of the force fields of Nibiru smashed into Earth, knocking off portion of it, And now, and once it smashed into the earth, that's when the moon popped out.
Man.
This is in the Holy Tablets. It is illustrated in the Holy Tablets. Yes, this is in York's doctrine. So, let me see. Because all right, again, in the Holy Tablets, chapter 1, tablet 5, verse 84 through 85, York says the orbit of Nibiru was only on it was initially on a 25,920 year orbit called AMS. It shifted into a new orbit of 3,600 year called a Shar. Its orbit was caught in the solar system and always makes its return. So, what I was trying to point out in the video, with that video of York at the first annual Wu-Nuwaup ball, that was when York was talking heavily about Nibiru, and we were there, and I remember him coming out. It was me and a bunch of brothers building on the Black Pyramid, and he was talking about, when you look up in the sky, you see that that's Hale-Bopp, and that was during the time that Hale-Bopp was prominent. And next to it, you'll see Nibiru. You see? And it was around the same time that the people of the Heaven's Gate cult had committed suicide, or was murdered, whatever you want to call it. But it was during that same time period.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so
so this is supposed to be like a Big Bang type theory where the force field, and they had technology back in these ancient times. They had the force field technology that we see in the like sci-fi movies.
But see, you gotta understand, this is what you. Let me pull up this Holy Tablets, man.
This is kind of like what like along the lines of like a L. Ron Hubbard, like what he was teaching as well. No, I didn't want to. I didn't necessarily want to have to go through this damn thing, but it. I mean, it's, and again, this is. If you go to page 41 of the Holy Tablet, let me see if I can pull it up. That's it. Let me show it right here. All right, on this page here, you see that? Yeah.
That's supposed to be Nibiru. And those little four things around it, those are the four winds called the force fields. Those little spaceships. It's on page 41.
So this,
and then
that kind of, go ahead. No, it kind of reminds me of like Star Wars. Remember the like big planet, like the spaceship planet they was living on?
Yeah. And this one right here, the north wind, is the one that supposed to have smashed into a planet that there's no documentation of, by the name of Meldic, where the Meldekians lived. And the troglodytes, this one that smashed into Meldic, causing the creation of the asteroid belt. And I think the west wind was the one that smashed into Earth, shearing off a portion of it.
Oh, that's the moon right there.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is Meldic. This is supposed to be Meldic. That's what they smashed into.
Oh.
And the other portion was supposed to have been the creation of the asteroid belt. Now, on this page, right here you have it. You'll see Nibiru, and they smash. And then here's, I think this, what is this? Let's see if we got it. All right. Nibiru moving, because when Nibiru is supposed to come through, it's supposed to come through counterclockwise.
Uh-huh.
Okay? So the north wind shattered the planet Tiamat into two parts. Okay? Now, let me see if I can read this mess. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Nibiru put up his four magnetic force fields, which was created by Anu and given to Murdoch to destabilize the four attacking ships. Nibiru created the magnetic cube called Kaaba. Now, that's not a coincidence that Kaaba is the same name of the place in Mecca that pilgrims go to yearly.
Right.
That's where York took it from. So these four great ships called the Ninga fleet moved on, and four powerful winds that were trapped by Nibiru's force field and unable to break loose, Meldic is now referred to as the Lost Planet. The four fighter ships of the Ninga fleet are called the North Wind, the South Wind, east wind, and west wind. That's what the four that I showed you, those four little ships. Those are supposed to be the winds or the fighter ships. These four fighter ships that originally surrounded Nibiru and appeared to launch an attack was now trapped. So these four winds were trapped in Nibiru's gravitational pull. Okay? Then this is on. Now this is what York is saying. Sitchin doesn't even say this. So York starts developing a whole new narrative to Sitchin's old story. Okay, so the great ship Nibiru activated its four magnetic force fields, incapacitating the ships. All of their controls and equipment ceased to function. The force field was put up, and they were trapped in the environment of Nibiru. And its new wobbly satellites were caught in Nibiru's gravitational pull and began to circle, making four whirlwinds. Let me see if I can jump down. Okay, let me try to speed it up because I don't want to get bored of all this.
No, you could. They be wanting to hear because we don't.
Well, anybody that has a holy tablet, the revised edition, the one that York had revised because the first one was so messed up. The page 41, or actually page 40 is where you can find this. All right. Okay, Nibiru pulled in towards Anshar, which means foremost of the heavens, now called Saturn, and its force field kissed off the planet, and this gravitational pull caused Nibiru to veer off its own orbit. The three satellites were added to Nibiru's force field, called Evil Wind, Whirlwind, and Matchless Wind. The orbit that Nibiru was originally on was 25,920 years. Orbit called it, and let me go on to that. All right. Then Nibiru bounced off the planet Rum, Titan, which now surrounds Anshar, Saturn, and sped up its motion. At this point, Gaga, Pluto, was released from its natural orbit around the sun and was pulled away in the direction of Lahmu, Mars, and Lahamu, Venus. The path of Nibiru was now bent even more towards the center of the solar system, directly towards Tiamat, which means maiden of life, now called Earth. As it moved into the solar system, Nibiru caused problems amongst the other planets in this solar system by pulling their moons. Nibiru making one complete spin through the winds off into space. The approach of Nibiru began to disrupt Tiamat, and this alarmed the beings of Tiamat that something was entering their atmosphere, causing volcanic eruptions, storms, hurricanes, and floods.
The beings.
The beings, yes, yes. And York uses that phrase "beings" very loosely, because the implication is that when you say beings, you're supposed to have all sorts of imaginary ideas of what these beings look like.
Right, right.
Oh, Amadi, I'm gonna send you the brother Ampu just sent me if that link. If you want to, anybody wants to look at the whole tablets, it's free online for anyone who wants to see it. I'm gonna or even I'm sorry.
Yeah, send it to me and I can post it in the chat room.
What's that?
Just send it to my Facebook.
Let me see. I think this is the one. I'm sorry. This is the study edition. Yeah. Let me send this to anybody that wants to.
That man said beings. Man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Whenever you can't name a specific group, they just gives a generic term beings.
Man, I gotta get one of them to come back over here and explain to me what beings mean, man. Somebody gotta break that down.
The beings, just like I said, the beings of risk, or sometimes they refer to Earth. They'll refer to them as Earthlings.
Man, I'm telling you, like, when I did my
make this stuff up.
Right, when I was doing the research on what I say his name is
Who?
The Scientology guy.
It's funny, man. It's funny. I know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, when I was talking about the Scientology guy, when I was doing my
L.
Ron Hubbard. That's what he was into. He was into all of that.
But here's the thing, Omadi. If you listen to the audio, who were the people on the planet before the Adam and Eve story? York says, "quote the Scientologists are waiting to hear what I got to say." So he's elaborating on all kinds of stuff, of pseudo information, and saying that the Scientologists are following behind him.
Wow.
And keep in mind, and I gotta stress this point, no primary source is cited. But but see, this is what I was alluding. This is what I'm not alluding to. This is what I was saying earlier, that the names of the deities affixed to planets is totally off. And they're only found in Zecharia Sitchin's writings, where you have Lahmu, which is Mars. You see? Kishar, Jupiter. These are not names. This is not Sumerian. This is not Sumerian. This is Sitchin. Mummu, Mercury, Lahmu, Venus. Listen, the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Akkadians, they already charted these planets, and they had already affixed names to them, and the various deities that they had connected with them as well. So, if Mercury, I'll give you an example. In the Sumerian and in the Akkadian, you have Mercury was known as Ninurta.
Right.
Mars was Salbanu.
Right. Venus,
Nin-Ana. Jupiter, Amautu. Marduk, Neberu. Saturn, Udu-Idim Sagas. These are the only 5 planets that are known in Wu-Nuwaup, which is an astronomical Sumerian text, as well as in the Astrolabe B, which is another astronomy text of the Sumerians. This is what the scribes had taken down from what they saw through naked eye astronomy. They didn't know of Pluto. They knew nothing about Uranus. There was no name Uranus by the name of Anu. So this is exclusively Sitchin. Go ahead.
Right. So that's what I was gonna say. Besides York, who was teaching these things? But you answered it.
Well, here's the thing. Sitchin has a number of contemporaries. He's got all kinds of crazy guys out there talking this stuff now. So it's now that Zecharia Sitchin is dead, and he never debated Michael Heiser for him to prove all of what he was saying. It's now a whole slew of guys out there. I forget the guy, because there's one guy on the History Channel. I swear, some Greek fella. I can't remember his name. We were talking about it on Tara, and we were talking about it the other night. But periodically, you see on the History Channel, they'll have these guys talking about ancient astronauts, and then they'll talk about Nibiru and the Anunnaki and all this other stuff. And there's a wonderful video that a guy that I did speak with, Michael White, I think his name is Michael White, where he and Michael Heiser did a video to debunk the whole ancient aliens hypothesis. It's called Ancient Aliens Debunked. And you can pull that up on YouTube, and you can see how a lot of these things, you'll find Zecharia Sitchin as being the core of it. Not taken away from that. Previously, you had Eric von Daniken in his Chariots of the Gods series. In his publication, he did the same ancient astronaut theory as well. But Sitchin, he just went the route of going into an ancient text by name, but not citing the text nor the line. You see what I mean?
Right.
Because what has been that I've seen is that when they'll say Sitchin will say in the Sumerians who talked about Nibiru and this and that. I don't know. He may have been thinking if he put that out, it would throw a researcher off, so that they don't go to the actual source that what the Sumerians had actually said. Because there is a word in the Sumerian language, and there are texts that mention this word. The word is Nibru. Nibru. Nibur, as opposed to Nibiru, which is in Akkadian, Niberu, but generally accepted as Nibiru. So in a text called Enki's Journey to Nibiru, if you pull up in the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, you'll see that Nibiru is a settlement name. It's a name of places, of a building. This is not Nibiru. This is not a spaceship. So in the Enki's Journey to Nibiru, the Sumerian text, I'm not going to go through the Sumerian transliteration, but it's on my website. You can see it. It says, he directed his steps on his own to Nibiru and entered the temple terrace, the shrine of Nibiru. Enki reached for the beer. He reached for the liquor. He had liquor poured into a big bronze container and had emir, wheat beer, pressed out. In kukuru containers, which make the beer good, he mixed beer mash. So by adding date syrup to the taste, he made strong, and it was strong, and brand bars and so forth. You'll find that in the text of Enki's Journey to Nibiru. Go ahead.
So Enki was trying to get drunk.
Yes, and I mean, hey, you're right. It's funny because this is because in the text, Anu, Enlil, Enki, they all sit around in the temple of Nibiru getting drunk. Listen, I mean, it makes it sound funny, but yeah, it's something as simple as that. Now, I contacted a guy who has a Sumerologist who has a number of books on Sumerian literature, language, and how to read it, write it, etc. John A. Halloran. And I was asking him about Nibiru in reference to Nibiru, which is something totally different. So he sent me an email. He was pointing out that Nibruki refers to the religious center of Sumer, the city of Nippur. And Nippur had the name because it was founded at that site. Regards, John Halloran. So, again, this coincides with what the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature pointed out as it being a settlement site, not a spaceship. And this is not Sagmigar, which is the Sumerian term for the planet that they saw called Jupiter. So this is something that York never taught. This is something that Sitchin didn't teach. He poo-pooed it by saying that, scholars, because all week I've been watching back-to-back Zechariah Sitchin interviews. And he would say, the scholars, they say that it is a planet. This is hogwash. It is what the Anunnaki traveled in. This is what he's saying, but he does not show the primary source. And that's what I've been trying to do with what little that I can contribute to this argument to debunk or refute what York was teaching, is that here are the primary sources. And there's a reason why they didn't cite the sources, because in citing the source, you'll see that it does not match what they're saying.
So, all right, so let me get this. Let me try to figure this out. And I just want to deal with Zechariah Sitchin right this second, and dealing with the conversation. So, from what you know, Zechariah Sitchin, did he travel to this area? Because we know he traveled. He supposedly traveled to Egypt, right? Did he travel to? Like, I'm just trying to figure out, where did Zechariah Sitchin get his information from? Because again, like, it all sounds like L. Ron Hubbard. I know L. Ron Hubbard used to write comic books, so he created all of these things that he teaches in Scientology out of comic books. So I mean, I'm trying to figure out, where did Zechariah Sitchin get his information from?
Well, from what I had found back in 2012, 2013, when I first started talking about this stuff, Zechariah Sitchin, he had no training at all in Sumerian history, language, culture, literature, etc. He was attended the University of London and dealt with economics. That was his studies. It was not Sumerian studies. It was not language. It wasn't any of those things. So what he did, and I remember watching him in an interview, he was saying that he was able to offer the best solution to deciphering or deciphership in Sumerian literature by showing that the biblical narrative is, because they're similar in narration, the biblical analysis is the best way to approach the Sumerian stories, because you can, according to him, you'll find once you're able to see how the Nephilim would be the Anunnaki, that's how you, in a nutshell, how you're able to kind of put the story together. And that was in part to how he was able to come up with his concepts. Again, not citing the source. And even when he would quote a text, he would have a cartoon illustration of a text and not the actual text itself. You see? And he would mention people like Dr. Samuel, Dr. No, was this his name? I can't remember his name right now. Because I'm getting Noah Webster mixed up with, I can't remember his name. It'll come back to me. But one of the prominent individuals who did a lot of the translation and in the field work on Sumerian literature and deciphering them, he would cite Samuel something. Let me pull him out. I guess I can pull this thing up. But he would cite various individuals, but not present their works. You see?
Yeah. So somebody asked, how long was York teaching this? Would it be safe to say from like 93 to like 2013?
About late 92 and all the way up until about, he kind of pulled off on it because the new thing that became popular was the Egyptian stuff. So he kind of pulled back off of it around late 97.
Oh.
No, let me go back. I'm sorry, about late 96. Because then he started moving it into this Egyptian thing. And then he started going into that area. So a second black book was put out, and that book dealt with a lot of pseudo-Egyptian ideologies.
Okay.
Yeah, Samuel Noah Kramer, that's the one. Ampu hit me with that. Thanks, Ampu. It was Samuel Kramer. He was a prominent individual that Sitchin would quote, but not cite what he would say specifically. Because Samuel Kramer was very influential in the field of Sumerian archaeology in the field. But again, these guys are modern for the most part. But this stuff goes back all the way to the early 1800s. And I pointed out in one of the, well, I didn't put it in the video, I put it in the article, that there's a, as a matter of fact, you can go to the online, I'm going to send you this link too, Amadi, maybe the people can check it out. It's the largest database of Near Eastern information, well, language, not language as in how to read or write, but it's a dictionary. It's the Syrian Dictionary of the Oriental Institute for the University of Chicago. And it took about, I think it took about 60 to 70 years for it to be complete. And it was just completed in the early 2000s. And in volume number N, you'll have Neberu and all of the entries that you'll find associated in any Mesopotamian literature on the various names of Neberu and how they're also used in sentences. You'll find it in the Epic of Gilgamesh. You'll find it in Enuma Elish. You'll find it in a number of other Sumerian or Akkadian texts. So there's no way that anyone can claim that Nibiru has anything to do with what Sitchin and York had taught. And that was part of what I was trying to do in my presentation on that. So also, if you pull up a book called A Concise Dictionary of Akkadian by Jeremy Black, Andrew George, and Nicholas Postgate, you'll see when they explain what Nibiru is, as found in the Enuma Elish and various other Akkadian texts, you'll see that it says it's the same thing. It is also a name for the North Star. It is a ferry. It's the crossing. It represented a crossing point. So if you just want to put it in a nutshell, anything that crossed the sky at a certain point, because at a certain point in the night or the day, Nibiru was visible as a bright star. Matter of fact, if you go online, they have a chart that shows you the most prominent planet that you can see in the night sky, and at certain times of the year, you'll see Jupiter. And then I would say, oh, there's Nibiru. There it is right there.
Right. But it's actually Jupiter.
It's actually Jupiter.
So the brightest, the most visible planet during whatever time of the year or whenever would be considered Nibiru.
Yeah. To the Sumerians, the Akkadians, Babylonians, Mesopotamians, that's what they saw. And at times, because they didn't actually know exactly what it was, but they did chart it as something that traveled every year, and they could predict it, and at the different positions that it would be visible. And they refer to it as Nibiru, and they also sometimes refer to Mercury because it was a red star. They also they could see that and they charted. These are things, again, this is naked eye astronomy. So it totally dismisses the idea of Pluto and Uranus and Neptune, which is what York and them talks about as being involved in the planet Nibiru coming through and smashing in, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's crazy. I think it was. I wanted to ask you some questions. Now that I look at Malik in the chat room, you guys sent me some stuff about Pickle Man.
Pickle Man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Pickle Man. All right.
Does Pickle Man? Well, is Pickle Man associated with Planet Risk or
no?
Okay.
No.
Right, you ain't got to go into it. I mean, we can go into that another time. Then, no.
I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's relevant at this point because the big-headed scientist put out a video on it, so I figured why not. So
who is the big-headed scientist?
I don't know who he is, but he has a beautiful setup on his YouTube channel by taking. He uses some type of computer software. And he's able to take a real person. He'll take Drew Ali. He'll take Dr. Yo. He'll take anybody and animate them. And then he'll put this audio track behind it where you have like deep voice. Like he'll have Enki. And then it's very powerful. You see, it's really nice. It's really beautiful software in cartooning. But again, outside of that, it's nothing more than just, Nuwaupian nonsense. Just like he presents a beautiful package, but once you open the package, it's empty.
Is this stuff real? Like Darth Maul is the Night King? Like,
huh?
I'm just reading some of his titles.
Oh yeah. Well, he like I said. York just points out, he just mentions Pickle Man in one of the publications. All right, he doesn't elaborate on it. He just has Pickle Man associated with the Creatures from the Black Lagoon. The Creatures from the Black Lagoon, which was a B movie from the 1950s, and The Predator. And he's talking about how these are all real. Extraterrestrials like the Predator, who was copied from an actual being from the Andromeda Galaxy, a spiral galaxy that looks like a grasshopper. And that's on page 196 of Is God an Extraterrestrial, where York is telling us that the reason the Predator looks like he looks is because he's from Andromeda, and the beings there look like grasshoppers, because that galaxy is shaped like a grasshopper.
Andromeda.
Yes. The Andromeda Galaxy is supposed to be where the Predator creature that you see in the movie is supposed to be from.
Who's naming this shit? I mean, is York just sitting around like, I'm just saying, like, is York sitting around drinking or smoking? You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm going to just name this stuff.
Let me tell you this. York had already realized that his followers would accept anything he said. When he said, don't believe me, check it out, that was just a catchphrase, because by that time, the majority of Nuwaupians believed it without having to check it out, because they relied heavily on, when he played an imam, when he played an Islamic teacher as Imam Isa, that the quotes that he would use to chop up a Christian, if they were right, then by default, everything else that he says is true. What he said about the Quran had to be true, because he's speaking Arabic and he knows it. So anything he says, so if he tells us in Is God an Extraterrestrial, page 86 to 87, question, tell us more about the insect-looking beings. Answer, you have those that look like insects and rodents. There are insects and rodents on Earth now that are from other planets, such as roaches, grasshoppers, praying mantis, the scarab beetle, just to name a few. Don't forget the dolphin. You also have beings that look like insects, however, they are human in shape.
Man.
Brother, I ain't finished.
So hold on. So they insects, like you know, like on like a sci-fi movie, you know, like it would be an insect, but it got arms and legs like a man. Come on, man.
And this, man. Look, people keep asking, why am I doing this? Because people have been believing this stuff. So I'm just trying to do my part to kind of debunk it. Look at this. All right. This book here, you see this book?
Yeah.
All right, Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrials. Now, York takes pictures from this book and puts it in his book. Look at this. Listen. This is what I wrote. All right, it's a publication that made it clear on the cover that it's a science fiction book. Also used are pictures from Barlow's Guide by artist Wayne Barlow. Which is a companion to his earlier book, Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrial, and then it contains his visualizations of different creatures in various fantasies. Now, this funny-looking creature here, this is in York's book. In York's book, Is God an Extraterrestrial? On page 86, there's a creature, figure 73, called Afshian, a creature that York expects his Nuwaupians to believe in. This is in York's book. This thing is too. Salaman.
Man.
This is I ain't lying, brother. I'm citing the book. So that's the book. If you ever see it, Is God an Extraterrestrial? And this cover.
Who is that on the front? Who is that on the front of that cover?
Oh, this is from the movie. I forget. It was I forget the name of the movie, but what's the brother that won the Oscar? His name is Lou Gossett. Lou Gossett played a role in this movie, and that was but this is actually from a cover of another book that was talking about extraterrestrials that York snagged and put on the cover of his book.
So what character is that supposed to be in York's book?
It's supposed to be a reptilian.
Oh man, come on.
Yeah. So this, of course, is the
Predator.
Yeah, that's the Predator. And York is telling us that the extraterrestrials, like the Predator, was copied from an actual being from Andromeda, a spiral galaxy that looks like grasshoppers. On page 96 of UFOs, Extraterrestrials in Your Midst, York has another drawing from Barlow's book, a creature called Dilbean, standing next to Salaman. And there he is. Now, you can get the book, and you see it right here on page 96. This is the original from the book, but York has, of course, a black and white because they didn't spend a lot of money on, color photos.
Right.
And, of course, this is in the Holy Tablets. These are dinosaur people. A girl over there laughing.
Dinosaur people.
Dinosaur people. This depiction of the intelligent dinosaurs who were evolving into humans.
Man, come on.
Yeah, this is right knowledge. This is Wu-Nuwaup. Yeah.
This is terrible.
Yeah, and let me see if I can go down. This creature here, this is Masmukia. Now, when I first heard Masmukia, I remember when we were Ansars, and we would go up to a brother and we wanted to know what his name. He said, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, Masmuka. And I said, that sounds very similar to, a Masmuka. But this is supposed to be a troglodyte, also known as one of the beings from Meldek. So he's a Meldekian. You see, got the little
Right.
And this poor fellow right here, this is supposed to be the leader called Hatan. He's a reptilian. You see the dude with the vest on?
Uh-huh.
Got the tail? Yeah. That was he's in the Holy Tablets as well. Yeah.
Man.
Anyway.
All right, hold on. All right. Let me ask you this. So hold on. So when York is talking about all these extraterrestrials and stuff, like all these insect people and dinosaur people, when did he see all of this? Like, who's instructing him?
Well, see, I pointed out in one of the articles that York was diagnosed as being a paranoid schizophrenic. He was suffering from mental issues. And I'm not saying that to be malicious. I'm saying that that's what had took place in the return by way of his attorneys having him to be mentally evaluated. Now, York has stated that he had visitors who used to talk to him, and I think it was that was one of the questions. That was a comment that was brought up on one of the shows where a young brother had said that one of my questions on the Nuwaupianism.com website was stupid or childish to say, can Malachi York levitate out of his prison cell? That's not a dumb question. That's a relative question because it is York who said that the prisoners watched him levitate out of his cell because he was visited by 3 extraterrestrials that he hadn't seen since he was a kid. So York, on one hand, made this stuff up, stole it from a lot of books that are out of print or so expensive it's difficult to find. Some of it he found out of that large volume set of books called The Matrix. Anything that was crazy, that sounded weird, York would bring it out and turn it into a real thing and turn the characters into black men and women.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, it's crazy, but it's also that craziness made York a millionaire and also gave him access to all sorts of people. And he was able to stagnate a lot of growth of people. A lot of young brothers who did studying, they studied York's stuff when they could have been studying other things that could have made them much better than they are today. But they spent years in York's ridiculous doctrine, and that time could have been spent bettering themselves, their families. They could have learned languages. They could have studied in college. They could have done a whole number of things that a greater nation could have been built. But, you know, in York's his ego, he stagnated a lot of growth. A lot of growth.
Now, as he went through these different... Okay, hold on. Because he went through a lot, like a few different things where he was teaching, like, you know, Islam basically at one time.
I think I know where you're going with that.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is the talking point. And he started saying this in one of the classes upstate when he said that I had to take y'all through schools. Okay, that was a tactic used to, whenever someone finds inconsistencies, errors, just mistakes, they could always put it on, oh, well, that was just a school. So you don't have to really take that, you don't have to put that much credit to it because it was just a school. It was a school of religion, the 3 religions. So he said, I had to take you through these schools, and en route to learning that knowledge, I had to submerge you in that knowledge. So we had to go through this rigorous course of Islam, this rigorous course of Christianity and Judaism. But as I was telling people over and over and over and over, that is an invalid argument because York, on up until his arrest, was pushing Christianity. And how he, watching the Word channel, saw a pastor come on who had looked in the camera and said, I'm talking to you, Malachi. And it was at that point that York started saying that the Word of God is real and that he is speaking to me. And then they took the Om sound off of the Black Pyramid and started putting out chants of Jesus and playing Jesus in Christian songs.
Wow. After watching the Word channel.
Yeah, after watching the Word channel. This is found on an audio. You can hear York saying this himself. And he's talking about what is wrong with accepting the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. He's my personal Savior. And this is found on an audio call. You want to question me, and I taught you.
Wow. Because at this point, you got the people confused. Now you're going to Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, that's the confusion in York's theology.
So going to the Ansar days though, when we talk about that, because that's basically the Ansars was like at the beginning, right?
Okay, the Ansar, yes, the Ansar Allah religious doctrine at the time, yeah, that popped along around 1970 when he opened up the first Ansar Allah community. I think it was in Coney Island first, and then he made his way over to Bushwick and Brooklyn. Back in the 60s, shortly after his freedom, back in 67, he was, according to him, that was when he was just getting his things together and taking that doctrine of Islam because it was getting popular at the time. And Ansar Pure Sufi was the group that he founded first. So nothing prior to that do we find in relation to York writing or talking about anything pertaining to Islam. All you have is just a series of arrests, delinquency. He went to jail for statutory rape. He was just a wild kid growing up. And it wasn't until he had shot someone in a gang fight in the Marcy Projects area that he went to jail for 3 years. And then when he was released, that was when he started his journey into the Islamic thing. Because I thought it was ironic, because in a book called Sheikh Dawood versus W.D. Fard, he talks openly that he knew nothing about W.D. Fard and the Moorish Science Temple doctrine, and it was a brother, Lukman, who taught him about Moorish Science teachings. I'm saying that because York liked to say that he was with Sheikh Dawood of the Islamic of the State Street Mosque in Brooklyn up until the time that Sheikh Daoud had died. So he said that when he was a little boy at age 12, he moved into Sheikh Daoud's congregation and became a part of that congregation. And he stayed there all his life. But that doesn't jive with his arrest history. It doesn't match. It's a very inconsistent, murky story because there's no proof of it. He'll say that Sheikh Daoud gave him a name, Isa ibn Abdullah, and that he has a certificate that was signed by Sheikh Daoud. Now, again, Malachi York had a tendency to always exploit people, use them to his advantage. He was an opportunist. So to have Sheikh Daoud write that for him, York could have gotten that written when he invited Sheikh Daoud to come to the Bushwick section back in 1979 to give the impression that he was with Sheikh Daoud going all the way back to the 1950s, 1958. The same way that he had the then Prime Minister, Saeed Sadiq of Sudan, when he was no longer the Prime Minister, he came through the United Nations and came down to Bushwick Avenue to meet with the guy who was raising the Ansars of the West, is what he called it, and giving the impression that Saeed Sadiq of Sudan backed Dr. York, back then Imam Isa, and that he was actually a relative, which York continuously said that he was related to the Mahdi family of Sudan by way of his cousin, his cousin Saeed Sadiq. Even though Saeed Sadiq never said this, York never showed any evidence of it, just his words. So he will use you to his advantage to give the impression that someone is back behind it, like he did Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, anybody who just takes a picture with him. Next thing you know, they pop up as being Nuwaupians or Ansars or in the Nubian nation.
Damn. So between the 70s and let's just say up to the late 1992, they were still doing teaching like the Ansar ideology of religion.
Okay, about 1988, 89, York was having this rift with Orthodox Sunni Islam, and Bilal Phillips, a Sunni Muslim, who released a book called The Ansar Cult in America. That book is what changed the game because it exposed Dr. York. It pointed out a lot of things within his doctrine, a lot of the things that he claimed that wasn't true. And subsequent to that, they had just uprooted and left and moved to Monticello, New York, which they call Jazir Abba, or upstate New York. And shortly after being up there, aside from, the whole child molestation things, aside from that, he started moving into the whole Judaism thing, or York's spin on Judaism. And then when we would go up for the 19 classes, he would give us classes in the temple there, the Minzarab, as it was called. And we had to take off the jalabiyas of the Ansars and put on the Jewish clothing of the kamis, the kuppah, and we would have the tassels on the ends, the fringes with the blue, the one blue fringe and the tassel. Yeah, we adopted York's version of Jewishism. There was talk at one time that any of the brothers in the community in the tabernacle that weren't circumcised, they had to go and get circumcised.
Damn.
And that was during the time that the new covenant concept came about, because we were now under a new covenant. And I think Polite had adopted that phrase and incorporated it into his business. The new covenant.
New covenant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the sisters, check this out, the sisters had to come and take the face veil off. The sisters, because again, this all happened around the same time. When Bilal Phillips came out with his book, The Ansar Cult in America, and York had violated the law by getting falsifying documents because he wanted to get a passport and make it look like get his name changed because he wanted to debunk the book Ansar Cult in America. But he ran into problems which caused for him to be, having to serve time on the weekends and pay a large fine for falsifying government documents with a fake birth certificate, by stealing someone's a photo ID. And as a result of that, he had deal with time. That kind of preempted a lot of his time teaching because he had to spend time where he would normally be on Sundays, but he would be incarcerated on the weekends. And so the sisters had to come off the veil because also at that time, the United States was going to war in Iraq for the first time. And so to keep us from being targets, he told the sisters take the veils off as well. So that worked perfectly with York's new ideology coming. And so then the sisters, it was presented upstate that the sisters had to wear this new garb, and the sisters will be wearing these Hindu style garbs. The sisters will wear a bindi dot in the middle of the forehead, and they would wear Pakistani Indian clothes, while the brothers will wear the kameez, based on various passages from the Torah, the Old Testament of the Bible.
Was the brothers wearing dots too?
No, the brothers weren't wearing dots. That's some New Jack stuff that popped up, I think, within the last year.
Yeah, I seen Ramesses with a dot on his head.
Yeah, that's some new stuff, and that has nothing whatsoever to do with anything that Ansars had put out. No. But again, they were moving away from Ansarullah, and then York started going after Islam, attacking it, and et cetera, et cetera. All because Bilal Phillips exposed them.
What I was trying to do, I'm trying to figure out, without asking, but what was he teaching during the time that he was teaching about this galaxy that's shaped like a grasshopper and dinosaur people? And
okay, that was during 96, 97, 95, 6, and 7, and that was during the Supreme Mathematics series, where you had books like Who on Extraterrestrials in Your Midst, Conflict Between the Gods, Is God an Extraterrestrial, Extraterrestrials in Creation, the God series. Back then they were called the Extraterrestrial series. You had the God series, which touched on it, but primarily it was the Supreme Mathematics series.
So by then he's out of Islam and he's in between. Yeah,
by that time Islam was long gone.
And he's doing the Hebrew thing at this time.
Well, the Hebrew thing didn't last long. I think that lasted a good year, because there were a series of books that he had advertised in the publications that never came out.
Oh man!
So he didn't last long with that thing, no.
So basically, it was kind of like after the Islam thing, he just went straight sci-fi for a couple of years.
He went sci-fi, if you will, and yeah, well. If you look at the video Elohim, that was one of the classes that he gave upstate, and it's one of those rare days that it didn't rain or snow, which was a horrible place to be in Monticello, New York. Whenever we would go up for those classes, it would be either snow or rain. And it was almost unbearable, and we had to take cold showers in snow outside. Lines lined all the way up the hill, and now knowing what York and them was about, I wonder if those showers didn't have cameras hitting or rigged in them.
Wow.
But that's another story. I'm not even going to that. But somebody asked a question. What is this? Please ask Chuck, do you think it was strange that York had so many changes in religion? Initially, it kind of was odd, but because he had a remedy for that, he just said that it was a school. So by these being schools, oh, okay, well, now we're going through a new school. So each time there was some kind of weird change, they say, Wu-Nuwaup is changing up again. So he's like, I got to give you what you think you want, so you learn think on the level of what I got to give. So we went with this school thing, and I think it's ironic that because York openly said that the word school is hell, shul in Hebrew, and saying that, those schools we went through, I guess that was the hell that we were supposed to have been put through. But that, that was part of, he really had a problem with people going to school. I guess he didn't really care too much for people being too educated, because then they'll look through his stuff and just say, this is a joke. Chuck, great job walking step by step through this maze. I appreciate that open scroll. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, listen, there's so much that I remember seeing, being a part of, watching, being at the time I spent with York. If people ask the right questions, you can pull it right up, or you can go to a book, a video, or audio, a class. It's out there, man. And right now, York is just completely incapacitated, but his legacy and all these, imitators are running around. I mean, there's so many different sects of the Nuwaupians that you can do a show on each one of them alone.
I was contacted by the newpoo.org people, and they want to have a conversation with me and possibly come on. And I'm trying to remember if those are the brothers that was on Sinetta's channel the one day that I think Tarnoon and them pointed them out to me. I had seen them and I called them and I said, yeah, they got the same name. I think they got the website. But I think these brothers is Nuwaupians though.
Yeah. Listen, Nuwaupians have been, they're a new, listen, let me put it in a nutshell. The same way that after the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had passed on, and then different fractions started breaking off and forming new denominations, that's how the Nuwaupians are at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, she said, Chuck, break down the barytheric gland. Oh, man. That's a crazy one. Artificial something. JB. Yeah, the barytheric gland, I don't know if you're familiar with that, Amadi. A barytheric gland was supposed to be one of the 4 higher senses that you were to receive once you are brought on the ships. It's supposed to be placed in the submental or in the chin, and that is supposed to give you access to those 4 higher senses: clairvoyance, psychometry, intuition, telepathy. Damn, boy, I remember all that stuff. But that's what the barytheric gland was supposed to be all about. But naturally, there's no history on barytheric gland. You won't even find it. You won't even find it mentioned.
The barytheric gland. The
barytheric gland is supposed to be some type of thing that extraterrestrials are supposed to insert back into you. York would say that the Aborigine of Australia, they were supposed to have their barytheric gland. They already have a barytheric gland, but it's not called a barytheric gland. You see?
That's crazy.
So I'm just trying to keep this focus. If I can keep some of these what is this, Chuck? What about when he taught about being a Moor? Oh, Chief Holiday. I'm in the chat trying to see if I can catch up with some of this stuff. Okay, Chief. Now the Moor thing. Now that's interesting because this came at a time when he was getting out of the Sumerian stuff, and started dealing with Egyptian studies. But along the way, he started tapping into this Moor thing. So we would refer to as the Nuwaubian nation of Moors. And that was around the time when he started going after Minister Louis Farrakhan. And Minister Farrakhan had done a speech, and then York was insulted that Minister Farrakhan had said that he challenges anyone in the field of theology to challenge him or to be able to debate him. And York said that he didn't say, with the exception of my good brother Imam Isa of the Ansars. This is illustrated in the book Who Was Clarence Jowar's 13X. In the 5% book, York talks about that. He gives 100, I think it's on page 106. He starts to break down Farrakhan's speech, and he starts attacking the Nation of Islam. And from that point, it was just open season. And then he wrote the book Sheikh Daoud versus W.D. Fard came out that same year. The Problem book came out. A hardback cover of the Holy Quran Circle 7. The postgraduate renewal of the lessons, Zigzag Zig, came out. And all those books were centered around the Nation of Islam, the Moor Science Temple, and in the process of beating them down, the Nuwaubian nation of Moors were to be risen up as being the premier Moorish nation. And this was at a time when he started talking sovereignty and we are indigenous, and that he even released a book called the Constitution of the Nuwaubian Nation of Moors, and what to do in court, what to do in law, what not to say, what to say. A third article judge should be presided over your case because you are sovereign and indigenous. All of that stuff is what York was teaching during that period. And we were wearing the red fezzes, and some of the brothers were wearing the black fez. And then as it became, Zigzag Zig. They got that from the 5% doctrine, I think the plus lessons. And then York put it on the cover because it was to take the Nation of Islam's lessons, the 5% rendition of it, and then break it down in the way York breaks it down in Wu-Nuwaup, which is supposed to be right knowledge at the time. It's showing that it's a postgraduate renewal of the lessons, saying he's here as a reformer, a mujaddid, to clear up the misinformation that the Nation of Islam was teaching, the Moor Science Temple was teaching, and the 5% Nation was teaching. That's what had happened during that period. And along the way, he started trying to assimilate himself with the empress of Louisiana at the time. Her name is Tunica Gostin El Bay, and the Moorish insolvency indigenous crowd down there. But there was some kind of it didn't work too well, and then York moved on and started moving into other areas, and he eventually even tried to pull it out when he was in court by having wearing a red Moorish fez. And that was it was during that time that they had to his lawyers had him evaluated for having a mental problem.
He said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna throw a fez on." What about? All right, so it says somebody asked for you to explain or talk about Ura and Thurman book, the Priest book.
Oh, the Urim and Thummim book.
All right, yeah. See, I'm saying that wrong.
Well, that's we did a show on that. Hold on. The Urim and Thummim. See if I can pull up the article that I did on it. That was nothing more than an adaptation of Ralph Bloom's book. Let me see if this thing comes up. Give me 1 second. It was called the, there it is. It was called the Book of Urim and Thummim, the High Priest, Ancient Mystic Order of Melchizedek. And if you can, I don't know if you can pull up and put the link in the chat, because if I put it in, it won't go up. But that was just a plagiarized book that York sold with the little runes that came with the book. Once you buy the book, you had to buy the little runes that come with it. Some stores, so we sold the runes along with the book. So you buy the book, you got to buy the runes too in order for it to be effective. So it was taken from Ralph Bloom's book called The Book of Runes. And in the article, I show you the Nuwaubian stones, the Viking stones that comes from, Ralph Bloom. And like I said, we did a show on this, and you can see that Ralph Bloom's book was centered around the Viking runes and the Germanic Norse explanations of it. And York did nothing but take word for word, literally word for word from Ralph Bloom's book, sold the book to us and whoever wanted to buy it, because it was supposed to be some kind of mystical stuff, because it had the ancient and mystic order of Melchizedek on it. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question. Brother Malik, Chuck, speak on Khalid and York. Oh, my God. You're right, Malik. I know where you're going with that. That was another, see, Amadi, that was during that period when things got really tense down in Georgia. Because when we were working on the Black Pyramid down there, it was just starting, not the Black Pyramid, it was just starting with the land. He was trying to put all these pyramids on there. Dr. Khalid was taking York to task because of some of the things he was saying about Minister Farrakhan and some of the things that were taking place with the brothers down in Georgia. Matter of fact, there was an incident that happened not far from Brown University where there was supposed to have been a lecture where Minister Farrakhan was supposed to be. And one of the brothers from Holy Tabernacle Ministries put up a flyer that had Minister Farrakhan, but it had a picture of him, in his little like white garb, and it had a dollar sign like a dollar bill put over top of the head, or like a banner behind his head. It was like a made mockery, and the brothers had demanded that the brothers take that picture down, stop circulating it, and there was a few physical altercations that took place, and this is at the same time that York was going after Farrakhan and Khalid, and York didn't want to debate Khalid because Khalid said he wanted to debate. I want to debate the brother, and York released 3 audio recordings called "Leave My Stuff Alone," where he addresses Khalid and said, and he's in a subtle kind of way tries to pin Khalid Muhammad against Minister Farrakhan, saying that Minister Farrakhan, talking about brothers being light-skinned, and he said, talking about Master Fard Muhammad being a white man, he said, Khalid Muhammad, he said, could be my God, but Master Fard Muhammad, he ain't one of us, and going on and on to this kind of, back and forth thing. One of the audios called, I can't remember, just listening to it. He talks about Khalid and refers to, you need tell the brothers to let it rest. This is bigger than both of us. And that, he refers to these chumps that are talking about me and coming at me. I'm the one that should be, let me defend the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, let me defend the doctrine, because I'm more qualified. This is what York is saying. And he's addressing Khalid Muhammad on these audio recordings and the Nation of Islam as a whole, because at this time, York was releasing a lot of books like Dr. Malachi Z. York Debates the Nation of Islam, and of course, all the books that he put out in the audio addressing the Nation of Islam as a whole. So Khalid Muhammad was going at Dr. York, calling them, in 1 minute he's Dr. York with all his righteousness, and then the next minute he got the same women in a club dressed like whores, And he referred to him as, he said, I ain't following no nigga that's telling me that he's from another planet. Yeah. Yeah, and if I can I'm gonna try to put that video up. I have the transcript of it, but I'm gonna put the video up because he really goes in on York. He said, "Hey, we got a nigga down in Georgia saying that he's from another planet." Now this is ironic because, after I kind of I was still Ansar Holy Tabernacle Ministries, but I also messed with Steve Coakley and them and Khalid Muhammad. So whenever they would be in D.C. at the Georgia Avenue Cafe, I would sit down with Dick Gregory. It would be Dick, Steve, and Khalid sometimes if he was not at the hotel. And he said, damn, as soon as we start naming the name, because Steve Coakley had this thing called the Names Committee, where at his lectures he would give out the names of people who were in the boule and their address, and y'all go visit them and all this other stuff. And he was talking about that, the brothers would, as soon as we pinpoint these guys to who they are and what their agenda is, here we get brothers going out there saying that it's not really them, it's some extraterrestrials. They're the ones behind it all. And that was a stab at Dr. York, because York was the one saying that it was extraterrestrials who were the creators of all the world's religions, and that we are chasing a phantom in religion to keep us from knowing who the real perpetrators of the world's confusion is, which were the Greys or EBEs from Zeta Reticuli.
Right.
Now, this was in part because Malachi York was promoting William Cooper's book. And Steve Coakley and them did a big show on William Cooper as being a fraud, still being with the Office of Naval Intelligence, and they were putting out misinformation to take us away from knowing who the real perpetrators of the misinformation are. And instead of it being these names, these people, mentioning various organization groups, the people who defend them, Boule, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg, etc., he was saying that, it's extraterrestrials. And York pushed that too. He was pushing that same narrative. And he being a self-professed extraterrestrial himself, he was saying, they're the ones that were setting up all the world's religions to keep us dumb and confused and fighting amongst each other. Meanwhile, they'll be taking the world's natural resources and minerals and taking it and using it for themselves. So Coakley and all them guys, they were kind of, saying, it was difficult because they didn't want to come down on a black organization at the time like that, because back then York was very prominent, so he had to do it in a kind of a subtle way that people can see and read between the lines. That whenever somebody out there saying that they're from another planet, we got to watch them guys.
Right.
We will be set up at the Malcolm X celebration, or the Malcolm X Day on 16th Street at Malcolm X Park. Meridian Park is what it's called. Steve will come through, selling some of his tapes and stuff. And this was at a time when York just went all out, and he was wearing the apron, the fez, and all that stuff. So we had a big banner of York in his Masonic regalia. So Steve Steve rolled by with a little crew, and then he looked. He gave me some dap. The brother said, "Hey, Steve," and they looked the picture up and down and said, "Huh? Oh, he's stretching out now." It was a funny way he said it, though. I love Steve Coakley, man. I remember the last time I talked to him, man. It broke my heart when he passed. It was really messed up. But anyway, in a nutshell, Malik, that was a very difficult period, because some of us as Ansars always wanted to go after the Nation of Islam. And then when York was really digging into them, a lot of us was loving it. And then it brought a lot of division for some other people. And I called myself trying to debate Khalid before I got to know him, when he was at the Masonic. It was at the Prince Hall Masonic Temple, Prince Hall Masonic Lodge on Florida Avenue, where he gave a lecture with Steve. And he came out. I had a table set up outside, and the brother Wu-Nuwaup, Sadiq, to some people who know him, because Sadiq wasn't a debater. He didn't like debating. He would always put me up there to debate people. And he said, he's over inside, get him. So when Khalid came out, it was Sadiq, it was Wu-Nuwaup, Mona Jackson, his wife Akhle, and me. And I had all these books on the Nation of Islam that York was putting out, the problem book, all that stuff. So Khalid come out, and, he look at the table. I call him on, he look at the table. I said, go ahead and get one, brother. Trying to get it on. And he looked at me and said, I probably have every one of them, brother. I was like, oh, okay. You know, and that it kind of neutralized me. He said he'll always be Imam Isa to me. That's what Khaled said. And, you know, he said, you know, y'all brothers, you know, stay around because, you know, after the lecture, people come out, y'all can come inside, you know, you ain't going to charge, just come on inside and watch the lecture. And from that point on, I was like, you know, this is a good brother. I don't want to obey him. And fortunately, I didn't. I would have got my head chewed off.
So, so what would have been the basis of like a debate between like you and somebody from the nation?
Well, me and somebody from the nation?
Yeah. Like you said, or no, or who you said you wanted to debate?
Dr. Khaled?
Dr. Khaled. Yeah. What would be the basis of what would have been the basis of the debate? This was after he had left the nation.
Yeah, he had already been out by that time.
Okay.
But my thing in doing that was, see, I was doing talk radio for York. This was around 97, 98, 99, and 2000. So it was during that period that I was sticking close with York. You know, he would call me on the phone. He was writing books based on some of the shows I did on the Mo Better Man show in D.C. Or he would give me books to what do you call it? You're supposed to read, proofread. He gave me some books. I still got them too. He gave me some books to. Matter of fact, see if I can pull one up. He gave me books to proofread so that you know, if I use them, whenever I use them on my my show. And so I was trying to debate everybody. I remember Ben Israel was on the Bev Smith show. I called in and started badgering Ben Ami on the show, and she hung up on me. I was trying to do anything and everything I could to represent the nation, because York was like, you know, do this, do that. And with the show being popular in DC, you know, it only made the Nuwaupian at the time look good. You know, we would debate Christians, you know, Muslims, Hebrew. As a matter of fact, we would go down, and when I had opened up a store in Baltimore, All Eyes on Egypt in Baltimore, and we would go down to North Avenue, and the Israeli church, the Hebrew Israelite, ISUBK, would come through every Saturday. So, you know, being set up down in Lexington Market, I used to get annoyed because the brothers would be on the bullhorn yelling, you know. So I had talked to some of the brothers, and I said, look, this is what we're going to do. So I knew one brother who was fluent in Arabic, so I got my man up. He used to be an Ansar, so I brought him, and I got about 14 brothers with me. And we came down dressed in all black with the fez and all that nonsense. So when the brothers of the Israeli church marched up the street, you know, I had the bullhorn set up, had the podium set up, and they was like, oh, wow, you know. And it was like a little debate that went on at Baltimore's Lexington Market with the Nuwaupians and the Israeli church. So that looked good, you know, because I'm up in Baltimore now doing my thing. And, you know, and York was putting all this stuff in elements of it in books. Like the Jesus Found... What? Am I talking too much? Hold on. Jesus Found in Egypt book was based on some of the conversations I had on the Israeli church show, because what had happened was, I think Brother Sakawa, I think that was his name, he was doing a show down there, and I would call in on the show and start badgering them. Uh-huh. And they would always say that, the Egyptians, because we was pushing the Egyptian thing, they would say that Abraham taught the Egyptians arithmetic. And so as a result of that, you know, York said, okay, I'm going to do something on that. So he writes the Jesus Found in Egypt book, and there's a whole section that he addresses that whole conversation that I had with the brother. This is one book he had sent me, that it was this book right here he had sent me was Adam Black or White. Yeah. And this was because when I was doing my radio show, I was dealing with this Christian dude named Rick, who used to always debate me online. I mean, debate me on the show. You would call him a Better Man show. And I would just go at it with him for like 6 hours on Saturdays and Sundays. It was the most popular show called the Mo Better Man Show on WOL radio in D.C. And several books had got. I'm laughing. Several books came out as a result of that. And that was when York started releasing some of the debates and the classes, or some of the debates that I was doing on the radio in a series called Dr. Larry Morgan Debates the Christians. And he released 11 of them. And, that was bringing in revenue. And from what Habiba and them was telling me when she would call me, or he would call us, that at that time, York was having problems with the sheriff in Georgia. So what kind of took the stress off, he was listening to those debates, and it amused him. He used to like to laugh at the thing, because all of a sudden they were telling me that it just it took their minds off a lot of the stuff that they had to deal with down there. So whatever, I think he charged $10 a pop. I never got a dime of it, but it's all good. It was at the time for what it had to be done at the time.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Somebody asked a question, but you basically was answering it at the same time. They was asking, have you ever debated anyone personally?
Debated people every night. Hell, when I would go out to my table, I'm sorry. At my table, I didn't make much money because I spent the entire day arguing with people, trying to reach people and teach people. So I debated all kinds of people. I mean, let me put it to you this way. Debate insofar as back and forth. Not a classic debate is where you present an argument, you bring your evidence, you present primary sources, you know how to cut between the games people play by putting up logical fallacies. No, it wasn't on that level, but it was just like, arguing with Christians, arguing with Hebrews, arguing with 5%ers, all that kind of stuff. Arm in the leg, arm in the head, that kind of back and forth thing.
He asking it. No, they said no. Have York ever debated anyone? Okay.
Okay. Now that's good. That's a very good question, Art. No. Well, let me do it this way. York would release the True Light tapes on those cherry pick tapes where some people, like a Christian, may come in and York would argue with them, and then they would chop it up and then make York look good. But York never debated any person who was, say, a PhD, no one who knew, Metanetter, Emigir, Sumerian language. He never debated a person fluent in Arabic. He never debated anybody like that, no. What they do have is there's an audio called "Which Resurrection Is Yours," where York is in a weird way kind of debating a Christian. But there was a video, there was an audio that we had as Ansar circulating in the community where York was arguing with a Christian and a Christian sister, and it was just frustrating York. York was getting frustrated. I wish to this day, Brother Jonathan Johnson used to run DC store. Man, he had it because I think I gave it to him, and York was just getting frustrated. So York was not good at debate, from what I've seen. He was good at derailing and putting up logical fallacies of red herring. He was good at that, sidetracking a conversation, but he was not good at debate from what I've seen. So no, he did not debate any scholars, even though they're put up in one of the old True Light tapes. York, he was the greatest scholar of the scriptures, and he debated all people. No, he did not. No, he did not. And I challenge anybody to present a video or an audio where York is debating anyone other than the audio, "Which Resurrection Is Yours?" And there's another one which was from the same person, but it was the next week, called which is the Resurrection, I think it is. Oh, and there was a young brother who asked him questions about the Sahuf. It's on an audio called Dinosaurs and Evolution, where there's this Sunni Muslim who is, it's not a debate, it's just like a little sarcastic exchange between York and this young brother. So the young brother says, so he said, so the Sahuf. So York said, yeah. So where is that? He said, because outside of you saying that it is, where is it? So York says that I prove that it exists by putting it out. Show me anyone in the Sunni Muslim world with a Sahuf then. You know, he played these little games with the brother. So the brother says, so I'm supposed to accept it because you say so. And he's like, no, you just go and get a book like it and prove it. This book to be wrong. You see, it's these little logical fallacies that he played with people, but he never actually debated any qualified person of a specific field of education that he advocated.
Let me see. I think they done asked all of the questions in here.
I get long-winded. I think Andrew called himself. He said, when John would say, I'm MC Iron Lungs. I can catch up with you, Andrew.
MC Iron Lungs.
Yeah, that's how we were. I mean, look, when we would be in the bait or, with the brothers in the brothers' house, we would have these little mock debates on what to say and how to say. If somebody hits you with this question, what can you do? Even York would throw questions at us and, make us look silly. And it's like, oh man, I hope nobody asked that question.
Right. I think that with this, I don't know what y'all plan on doing. Like as far as cause y'all got so much information. And I know you got the website.
Okay. Like I said, we're working on releasing a book on this stuff, doctrine, and then a book that deals with the legal aspect, because we're not young men anymore, even though I feel like I'm 30. But they're going to be. Listen, cults are going to always be around, and the Nuwaupian cult is because you got so many people involved in it, little pockets, not a whole lot, but they're passing it on to their children. You got Prince York; he's going to be developing his own little Nuwaupian denomination, and a whole bunch of other people, So there should be the website eventually. If I don't set up some type of a trust or pay some people to keep it running after I'm gone, it's gonna die, and I don't want that. So to remedy that, we're gonna release some books. We're gonna put a book out that's gonna be a lot of the information on the website, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. A lot of stuff. There's so much stuff that we got that is not on the website that has to be put in a book. So that's one of the areas that we're gonna pursue in 2018.
Y'all need to do a DVD, like a movie, a documentary.
We're working on that too. Matter of fact, I'm working with somebody who's doing a documentary now on something. And after that's done, we're going to see where we go with it. So it's going to move beyond just Nuwaupianism.com and videos on YouTube. It's going to move into a grander area.
Yeah,
but it's going to take time.
I think it could be bigger than like the Hidden Colors series, because the story is like never ending.
No, because it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot coming out soon. Well, I ain't gonna say soon, relatively soon. That will be lasting beyond me or anybody else. And for the record, the sister Pauline Rogers, who was on the Montel show, she's about to release. Well, I think she's already got it because I have the cover of it. She's already about to release a tell-all book on her memoirs on life with York as an Ansar and what led up to his arrest with the molestation. So she wants to do a show with you. I wanted to make sure I check with you and when she's available, and she can give her give her story, give her side, aside from what was said on Montel Williams' show, which wasn't enough.
Right.
But she has a book that she's been working on for a while now, and it's finally finished.
Whenever she wants to come on, just link us together and we can come up with something. Just let me know.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely do that. Yeah, I talked to her today, so I'll pass that on to her as well.
Right. Yeah, that's the move though. I'm telling you, I think it would be educational, and at the end of the day, good or bad, is still a part of our history.
It is, and and to York's credit, let me say this: he did a great job at bringing people into an organization. Unfortunately, there were ulterior motives involved. It wasn't in the best interest of the people, and certainly not for the people. It was more on his own selfish gains, his own narcissistic mindset. But he did a remarkable job of getting people to join an organization and doing anything pretty much he wanted them to do under the guise of the nation, quote unquote, the nation, the Nubian nation. And he was able to influence celebrities to get involved. May not move in because they were not asked to move in, but to donate money, to be a part of it in some capacity. James Ingram was a staunch Nuwaupian. Did songs on Tamaray. One song he did called Atum Ray that he sung. He's a ballad he sung to Dr. York. Musical soul child, grew up in Philly as in the Ansar Allah community.
I know James Ingram was a Nuwaupian.
Oh yeah, he was a staunch Nuwaupian. I mean, Fez and all, the red Fez, the black Fez with the Ankh. He was in it. He was in it to win it. Jimmy Cliff, Shaheed from Stetsasonic. Oh man, a lot of guys I'm trying to remember I saw that was down there. Used to come around and we would talk to. Talked to some of the guys. Remember their names from Delphonics. They weren't Nuwaupian, but they were friends of York because York would he went on tour as a opening act for various artists, as Dr. York. I said Chuck Warren did Kathy Johnson and Ruby Wright books also. Open Scroll. Yes, Open Scroll. Kathy put a book out called The Main Wife, My Memoirs, but she wrote it under a pseudonym. What was the name? I can't remember what the name was. But York in the book, his name is Marcus. And Ruby put out a great book called, she's going to hate me for this. I can't remember the name of her book. Ruby Garnett. Her book is called, oh my God. Sorry, I can't remember the name of it, but it's online. Just tap in Ruby Garnett and the book will come up. And they give their account of what took place. And in that book, Kathy Johnson, she apologizes to the victims that she harmed, under the spell of York. Because she couldn't reach out to them because being still under probation from her conviction, she was not supposed to contact any of the victims. But she does, in the opening of the book, apologizes to all the people that she harmed, and was kind enough to, contribute to my website in, interviews where she, said that, yes, the things that he did, I was there, we did this, we did that. Yeah, so it was, so a lot of people said that she went to jail keeping silence. No, she didn't. She told what had happened. And she told what had happened in her book. But she herself admitted, yeah, I was in a cult. She was so deep under his spell, she didn't realize that she was under that spell.
Yeah,
so Kathy Johnson was his main wife, not Prince York's wife, Prince York's mother.
If people want to, she did a like a blog talk interview too, like back in I think 2013, where the title of it was like well, you can hear the audio. It's called damn. I survived living in a cult or something like that. And it's a true story by Ruby Garnett if they want to check that out too.
Okay, yeah. That's a great one. Yeah. She did a show. I think she did a show with us when I first started coming on your platform, Amadi.
Yeah.
Yes. She did an excellent presentation on that. And her book is talking about one of the victims, partially one of the persons in the book, one of the victims who was in court that New York got convicted on molesting her, who physically damaged her. Yeah, that's a good book.
Yep. Well, yeah, man. I know you can go all night.
Yeah.
On this.
I just wanted to, like I said, it wasn't necessarily exclusive to Nuwaupians or York, but I did want to touch on that whole Nibiru thing once and for all, to totally smash the idea of it being a spaceship of sorts. Because it's not just something that the Nuwaupians say, but it's also, Sichonites and a whole bunch of other people in these different types of esoteric groups that anytime you tap into Nibiru online, you're going to get that. They're not going to get any kind of scholarly works on it until you really start digging deep into it.
Right, exactly. And I want to ask those questions because I knew some of the answers but I just want to put those questions out there so we can get the answers about, is there any evidence, on an archaeological level or ancient texts pointing to some of the things that was being taught. Are they still teaching about some of the stuff we talked about tonight, dealing with like the Anunnaki and all of that?
Well, in a weird kind of way, there's a twist that now the Anunnaki are seen as bad people and cannibals. They will be like eating people. Yeah, and that Enki is now the good guy, and Enlil's the bad guy. When it's the opposite when York was around. So this whole Anunnaki thing is just totally blown out of proportion. There are about 145 entries of Anuna mentioned in Sumerian literature. And that's a very tiny part when compared to the vast amounts of fragments and texts that the Sumerians and the Akkadians and other groups had produced. Somebody had said it was over 1 million. That's pseudo. That's not true. But there are hundreds of fragments of Sumerian literature, and Anunnaki only played a small role in it. A very small role.
Yeah.
So it was that insignificant that you don't find them in court proceedings. You don't find them in anything other than just some of the songs or the poems, the epic poems of great events that took place in the stars, where one being Tiamat and versus Marduk, who is the hero of the epic, one of the heroes of the Wu-Nuwaup, and how he defeats the dragon. Oh, now that I mentioned, check this out. Here's something else that is pseudo, and it's something that Nuwaupians still push to this day. I think the Nuwaupian assassins like to push it too. They have this thing called the spell of Kingu. Now, Kingu, you'll find Kingu mentioned in the Enuma Elish, but you do not find any reference whatsoever of a hypnotic spell that Enki had cast on human beings and called the spell of Leviathan or the spell of Kingu. That's pseudo. And I've been challenging the Nuwaupians since 2011 to show one primary source that mentions it. And to this day, they have not done it. And it stands to reason they ain't gonna ever do it.
Crazy. Ain't gonna happen.
So, more York. This is all York's stuff, man. So a lot of the guys just keep promoting and pushing York's nonsense.
Now on your website, it said that York now is saying that Zechariah Stitchin is a deceiver.
Yep. Well, this is something that they said in one of the. See, what they had was this thing called updates early on. Not too long after York, it was about 2010, around that time, I guess. And these were supposed to be people who went down to the prison and would meet with York and start talking and bringing back messages that he said, and they type it down and they bring it back. So in one of the updates, in the Hall of the 24 Elders, which is a bunch of old washed-up Ansars, he had nothing to do, so they classify them as the 24 Elders, who are in part writing some of this nonsense that's being pushed today in the Nuwaubian doctrine and saying, York is given the okay for it to be pushed. And in that, they said that York said that there was this Jewish man who was sent to translate the cuneiform tablets and that he was deceiving people. That's what they're saying about Zechariah Sitchin at this point.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So now they switched it up after using
using it for years, since the 1990s. Oh, here it is. I found a quote. This is it's from Roots of the Bible and Quran. Roots of the Bible and Quran, Mashikia, sections 11 to 26. It says here, I'm going to read what it says. I'm going to read what I said. Okay. Now, in 2013, York takes a new position that Zechariah Sitchin was a deceiver. York has his followers read, quote, 17, just who were these beings and this jealous God, and who was he jealous of? 18, recorded on stone tablets before the Torah, Bible, in Mesopotamia in cuneiform from Latin canis, a wedge shape found in a rock once called ancient Assyria or Babylonian. Babylonian inscriptions is called cuneiform writing. 19, there were many thousands uncovered, and those that found them could not read them because it proves their Bible stories came from Sumerian stories and don't all agree with their religious teachings. So they had one Jewish man named Zechariah Sitchin mistranslate and create books called the Earth Chronicles to misguide the public and create doubt until other came, this is what she said, until other came and started to translate and was not of Abraham's religion. Those many stones speak of crafts coming to earth. So that's basically the position they have on Zechariah Sitchin today.
Wow.
He's been pushed under the bus.
Well, they should get some of that money back from them books then.
Unlikely. No, that money was, that got York a nice navigator and property. Got him a nice home at the time in Athens. All those edifices, you see, he paid a lot of money to the construction companies to build Tamaray. I mean, all the brothers did on the free labor was to clean up, do some of the artwork on the outside, some of the plaster. But he paid them construction companies a lot of money to put that metal, the skeleton together. Put a lot of money in there for them construction companies. Same construction company that put pyramids up in downtown Eatonton.
Somebody asked, who's writing the new Nuwaubian book?
Well, that's I don't know. I don't know who's writing it now. From what I've been told, it's these people call themselves the 24 Elders. These people like Sakina and a bunch of old heads that used to be back in the day. But they are fixing a lot of it to York. Now, granted, some of the early Patarat and actual facts, those were letters that York was writing while he was in jail to different people. and then the sisters in the office would take them, transcribe them and add pictures to them and do some add-ons, connect them to previous books that York wrote to make them bigger. And those were the early Pontarac publications that came out shortly after his arrest. But, 2017, all that other stuff, now those are ghostwriters within the cult that York may have given an okay to, or they would just be bits and pieces of old stuff that York said that wasn't necessarily proven, and they started adding on things and trying to give a new spin on it. But a lot of it was just a bunch of old Ansar doctrine, old Holy Tabernacle Ministry doctrine, just retold.
Nuts.
Oh, T-Dub said, this show must go on. And we'll do it again.
Yeah, we'll get it going. Yeah, let me know. Keep in touch with me about when she what she wanna do or when she wanna come over. I'm open to do it.
Oh yeah. I'll get with her tomorrow and see what happens. And like I said, I appreciate you you've been giving me a chance to do this because there's some other platforms that it actually come on. But I kind of like the way you do these things.
Right.
And I'm not that I necessarily would even go on there at this point, but because Sonetta has such a large platform, I think it would be. I think that with some of the documentation, the evidence that I or some of the other brothers could present would definitely change the growth of the organization. Because unfortunately, by him opening up that door to them, and not have a counter argument to it. That's where it becomes unfair. There's no counter point to the Nuwaupian narrative that's presented on certain other platforms. So I appreciate you for even giving us, or anybody, the opportunity to challenge it. And because it gets goes in so many different directions. I can be talking about one thing and then it go into another area. But I wanted to stay on this topic pretty much, and we did pretty good with it as far as he's getting it apart, because I wanted that video to come out and want that video to be seen so people can basically see, okay, here are the primary sources. Now you can go and check them. These are sources that York and them would dare never to post, right. And Fisher never posted it, and so that kind of helped speed the show up without having to go to this place or that place.
Right.
But again, the article is cited on the opening of the video, so you can always go to it or go to the website itself.
They asked, could I have a show with Wu-Nuwaup Kai talking to this brother? I don't know. I don't know. Cool. Yeah, I don't know his information. Maybe I try and reach out to him or something. I never spoke with him before.
I think Tarnoon is friends with him. He knows him. I'd be happy to talk with him. I'd be happy to talk with any of them guys. It's just unfortunate that some of them get kind of emotional, and I'm like the devil incarnate to a lot of these people.
Did you listen to the conversation between me and Malachi's disciple?
Yeah, I was listening to it. Somebody sent it to me, and I listened to the whole thing.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad conversation.
No, it wasn't a bad conversation. He for the most part, kept it cool. But for some reason, when I seen it get up on there, these people just get bent out of shape. And I mean, yeah, I can be sarcastic. Yeah, I'm an a-hole, truth. But I learned that from York.
Somebody said that he no longer.
This is what I've kind of noticed that, because they kind of scoff at the fact that anytime you mention that name, Wu-Nuwaup to a Nuwaupian, they kind of like, because they kind of feel he kind of turned his back on them. People are waking up. That's right. The bottom line.
Yeah, maybe he'll come on. They said he ain't a follower of York no more.
Yeah, he kind of moved on and embraced other things, moved on, And I wish the brother well. Listen, I don't hate any of these guys. It's just that, I have a store. I have some information on this organization. I was a part of it since 1989, And I grew over time to be close to the leader. And so there's a lot of things that I know about, experienced, documented, and I still hold on to this day. So I guess you can't really run that BS over on me because I know all the games, So it might be a little more frustrating to talk to me as opposed to, somebody who's not intimately involved with the doctrine and the organization.
Right. Yeah, maybe, like I said, maybe we can get him over here, and talk to him, and
That'd be fun.
See what's going on. Yeah,
sure, that's fine. And even when I was after the show, we were still texting, and the brother whoever he called him, I don't know who he is, calling him Malachi Disciples. I can't pull myself to use that, but the person, we was texting in the chat, and he was asking good questions, but I think he was asking out of he wanted to legitimately know the answer, but didn't want to come off in a humble way and say, okay. So but I took it at that, and I just answered the question and try to cite some sources for him to go back and check. And like one of the thesis of the thesis of Zechariah Sitchin's whole Nibiru thing is VA 238, I think it is. It's a clay tablet, and it's supposed to be supposed to be a visual imagery of Nibiru in the clay tablet. And that thing has been long debunked. So I did an article, and I'm thinking about doing a video because people seem to pull it up, and that's the mainstay of Zechariah Sitchin's theology on that, is where he'll just he doesn't translate anything. All he does is gives his rendition of it in English. It's called VA 243. It's a cylinder seal. And you'll find it at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, Germany. Matter of fact, let me see. Right here. You see this?
Yeah. I seen that earlier.
Yeah. See, now, this little... can you see this? I don't know if the camera's...
Yeah, I can see it.
See that?
Yeah, him holding that.
All right, this is right here. This is Sitchin's whole argument. He does not translate the Sumerian literature right here that's telling what this is about. All he'll do is say that this is Anu or the Anunnaki, and that right there is Nibiru. Here's the sun, and these are the 9 planets, or the 10 planets, and then the moon, and then the 12th planet. I think he said this was the 12th planet, one of them. Because then York takes this in a book called Does Religion Breed Ignorance? And he's parroting what Sitchin is saying, that this is talking about the planets. And plenty of people have already looked at this thing. Oh, here, this is a better picture of it. Yeah, this is the actual one. And all they had to do was just look at this right here, and you can see what it's telling, what it's saying. And number one, this right here is a what the hell do you call this thing? It's used in digging up dirt. It's a damn, what the hell does it call this? There it is. It's a plow. It's right here. And I did this article on that, and from the database that I was able to check it, and then from my own research from looking at the cuneiform characters and associating them with specific phrases, with the determinatives and the logograms, is right here. You can even see it, that this right here represented a king, because he's not an Anunnaki, because the Anunnaki will wear the 3-horn crown. So this would be a ruler, a king, and he's passing on the plow, and this person is taking the individual who is the servant. And it even says it, Dub Siga Ila Iliat, your servant. So this tiny little, this is small. It looks big, but this is very, very small. And you use magnifying glasses to read it. But it's repeated. It says, Dub Sig, your servant. And here's the servant. and apparently the ruler is giving him a plow. But this up here, there's no reference to this whatsoever. And what we do see is, we know, so this is from York's book, The Origin of the Six-Pointed Star, The Religion Believed Ignorance. Right here, they talk about it. As you can see, the Jewish star nor the Islamic star is the original six-pointed star. It goes all the way back to the Sumerians and the 3rd millennium BC. This carving is located in a museum in East Berlin called the Verdematungsmuseum and the State Museum. This depiction of a group of 11 globes encircling a large star is clearly a depiction of the solar system as it was known to the Sumerians, a system consisting of 12 celestial bodies, and that is totally false. So you'll see it also in Mission Earth and the extraterrestrial involvement. This is one of the books that York started really pushing that whole Zecharia Sitchin premise. Right here, he says, the Anunnaki came to the Sumerians and gave them advanced information on creation of the solar system and all the planets, and out of the solar system, they also taught them how to build great cities, farming, and how to build crafts that could fly in the air. No proof, no evidence. So these names like Vulcan, here we got Meldic, Vulcan, Kishar, Anshar, Titan, Usmi, Pluto. All of these names are only found in Zecharia Sitchin's books. And the Sumerians only knew of 5, and they don't name Earth. You see, and I even pointed out in the article where this is taken from Zecharia Sitchin's book, The 12 Planets. It's the same thing that York did. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. All York did was just color it up a little bit.
Wow.
You see? And then, as far as that symbol being a representation of the sun, no, because the sun is always depicted a specific way. So we know that symbol is not. And you'll see, and I made sure I pointed out the various ways you'll see how the sun is depicted in Sumerian iconography, where you have the sun, one of the stars, and a crescent. This is, and the article goes into it very in depth, and I present other associations, and you can see it in other texts where it's word for word breakdown of it, what it is, how it's viewed, etc. Okay, and then that large configuration seems to be the same thing as little orbs, and that same little star. That was a very prominent thing in Sumerian iconography, representing the constellation of Pleiades. So they're saying that the Pleiades is actually planets. And the other one pointed out is supposed to be Nibiru. So this article that I did on this VA 243, it totally debunks Sitchin and York's foundation. That whole foundation is destroyed by going hardcore on that. So.
And that's on Nuwaupianism.com.
Yeah.
Right?
The question is, ask the Nuwaupians about VA 243. You can say ask Zecharia Sitchin about that whole thing, because that's it. And York, again, York just went with it. Whoever did the research for him came back and said, oh, you got to use this. And he just ran with it for years until, people started coming out and going after Sitchin, and then York pulled away from him.
Yeah, man.
I'm sorry, I know it's late over there.
Nah, we good. Yeah, we good. I just seen. I was trying to pull it up real quick. I was gonna put it in the chat room.
Oh yeah.
Let me see. I got it pulled up, and what am I on?
Yeah.
I'm gonna post this in there. Then when they get this, they can go to all the rest of them. Because this is one about Stitching too. Because this goes into like all of the. It says wrong knowledge. Then it goes into all of the different books and stuff.
Yeah, that category, because some of them, some of it, you're dealing with the holy tablets, and then you got to jump back into right knowledge gone wrong. So most of the articles are in right knowledge gone wrong because it's focused more on the doctrine.
Right.
You know, because I didn't want to limit it to just Ansar or Wu-Nuwaup Nation of Moors or Holy Tabernacle Ministries, the Egyptian Church of Christ, or Holy Seed Baptist Synagogue. But I wanted to, incorporate the actual facts, the Patarak, because some people were saying, "Oh, you talking old doctrine? You still in the past?" And so I said, "No, I'm gonna cover it all." And so
have you looked at before I let you go? I gotta ask you about this. Have you looked at any of the videos or listened to any of the stuff that I've been doing on Nature Boy?
Yeah, man, I saw that. Man, you had me rolling at work, man. You called and said the girl had long titties.
Right.
That joint had me rolling. But yeah, man, look. I was checking that out. I said, this guy is using York terminologies.
I pointed that out to the people, I think, yesterday and today.
Yeah, he was. I don't know if he was. I ain't never seen him before. He's young. But he's definitely using some of that York, catchword.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. I'm going to try to figure out exactly where. They said he's from Georgia.
Well, no wonder.
Right. I'm gonna go I gotta make sure I gotta cross my I's and dot my T's, but that's what dot my T's. Dot my I's and cross my T's. They said that he from Georgia, and I heard him use things like etherins.
That's York. That's a York. That's exclusively York. Etherian.
Yeah.
Or the ether. Because see, York taught that the Etherians are supposed to be the Igigi, the ones who are the ones who stayed back on the Beru. See, the Anunnaki came to Earth, and the Igigi stayed in the clouds on the Beru. Bogus. Pseudo. It's pseudo. I was about to say Pluto. It's pseudo. And
Pseudo-judo.
These Etherians are disembodied entities that could walk in your dreams and walk through walls and doors and all this other stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. And when you go to... Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just was wondering if you had been, just checking out.
Listen, every time you come on, I check that stuff out. And I was watching. I was at work. I was like, man. And I'm seeing a dude at the airport, and because they stink, man, that joint would have me laughing. I'm sorry. You would trip with that, too. But you up there making... When you said Shorty had the long titties, man, that joint had me rolling, bro. But and now on the flip side, it's a sad thing because just like I was telling my girl who's driving, saying, you know what? We're starting to see a whole bunch of these little Negro cults popping up, minor and major, and this is how York was able to slide and get by, because you're looking for the white boys to pop up like that. And in the meantime, these little Negro cliques are forming, and they're selling these people these dreams of saviors. This, you're going to heaven there, and these people want to believe in something because they see white society, and now with this whole Trump cult thing going on, everybody's like, man, we need to organize. Something they've been saying since the 1914, but nevertheless. They listen to these guys who sound like they know what they're talking about and they have some good intentions. How are you going to go down to Costa Rica, don't even speak the language, and think you're going to set up shop and then you're going to go up a fight against the people in their land? And then you custom America out of America, this and that, and then you can't wait to get back to America.
Right. Can't wait to get back to America. Then when you get back to America, now you're talking about the embassy and shit. Right, yeah.
Hey, man, look, that's what York said. York said, when he was pushing that whole Moorish sovereignty stuff, he said, y'all need to get away from this Africa stuff. Africa is no more. It's dead. It was a nice place once, but it is no more. Y'all are Native Americans.
Took Africa all the way out of the...
Yeah. I cited 2 audio recordings where York is talking about how Africa. He said that if y'all sitting up here thinking I'm talking about going back to Africa, you're in the wrong place.
Wrong spot.
Yeah. That's York's position on the continent of Africa.
Damn, man.
Yeah, so we got to really watch these guys, man, because they're young, they're charismatic, they got the gift of gab.
Yep.
If they got some money, they'll dazzle you with the trinkets and the imagery like York did, and the next thing you know, you're going to find yourself with children with these people, or some kind of sexual or some kind of homosexual ritualistic act that they say is just a ritual. Because I'm working on an article now that may do a video where York is talking about the priests. He said the reason that the priests are not being arrested for having sex with little boys is because they know that it's an Egyptian ritual, and they're holding on to the secrets. Now, you know where that's going to go, right?
I already know where it's going.
Yeah. So we're putting all that together right now. I'm just going through the trial transcripts. So like all the references that York made, that the victims was talking about how he was saying that it's not gay, because York said that in the audio, sex, wealth, and something else. He's saying that you may see it as homosexual, but they don't see it as homosexual. And that's the same thing as Tariq and Salam, and then was saying at the trial, saying that York said that it's not gay if you do it. The Orisha used to do it, the Egyptians used to do it. So I'm tying all of that in an article on that.
Man, that's a whole other conversation, because I was talking to me and Tawana was talking, and she was asking some questions about Egypt. I'm gonna have to get Wu-Nuwaup over here too to ask some questions.
That would be the best. That would be one of the best persons to debunk a lot of the the rhetoric that's being said, because 90% of the time, people that are making those claims like York, they're not citing a text. They'll just take a picture, and then they'll make an assessment based on a picture, ignoring completely the meta-netta that's around it, under it, aside of it, the same way that they do when they look at anything. They say, well, that's an Anunnaki right there, but they're ignoring any cuneiform writing associated with it, telling you what the story is talking about. And it's that kind of quack pseudo scholarship is why we're in this crazy case now, where you got these people that are running around saying anything they want to say. Yeah. Get bro Jabari.
You know what I think is
I talked to Jabari. Jabari, that's my man.
But you know what I think is. You know what I think is happening though. I think what's happening is, like you just said, like they looking at some of these pictures or whatever, and they creating like a lot of the things that's happening that may be like homosexual activity, and not necessarily what was actually being taught during the ancient times there. Right.
And that's, like, again, that's pseudo scholarship.
Yeah.
If you're going to take an ancient icon, an image, and then, like, I'll give you an example. Just like looking at the when York put in his books about they had helicopters and submarines in Egypt on the walls at the Temple of Dendera. They're saying right there, see, that's a submachine. I'm sorry, that's a helicopter right there. That's a light bulb right there. But then you say, well, okay, what is this saying? Because whatever's being said is mentioned right there in the writing. How come y'all not, and I always say this, why are you not translating what the meta-netta is saying, telling you what this relic is about? They don't do that. They just take the picture and elaborate for days on the picture. It looks like this, but they are ignoring the text. Yeah. And, I'm doing my part in trying to get better at this Imagir, this Sumerian literature and language, so I'm able to pull this stuff out. So, you can destroy the nonsense that you find on Google searches whenever you type in Anunnaki.
Anunnaki. Every time I hear that, I think about young Pharaoh, because, he was on it tough for a minute.
Yeah.
He was on the tough for a minute. I haven't heard him talk about it in a long time though. So he might have went through a phase where he was researching it, and then he might have moved on.
I mean, this is how I see people like Young Pharaoh, Prince York, and all these guys. Listen, I was young like them too. I was hungry, and I was these guys, if they were properly educated, they're sharp with the tongue. Their minds are inquisitive. They can store information. If Prince York or Young Pharaoh had real, solid, concrete ability to articulate primary sources and being able to check and they would be devastating. They would be something dangerous for the opposition. But, unfortunately, just like what York did to another set of generations, these people, not necessarily Young Pharaoh, because he's on his own thing, but people like Prince York and a lot of other young brothers, they're being sidetracked, and they're going to be just another a wasted group unless they start their own little cult and then continue the York cult, continue the York cult-like membership. But they're sharp. And I was just like that. Anytime I see somebody, look. When I was an Ansar and Holy Time, I walk down the street. If you holding a Bible in your hand, I'm gonna stop you. I'm gonna step to you. That's how I used to do it. I was all about doctrine. That's why my name in the community was Idris, one who studies, and that's all I did. I kicked doctrine.
Yeah.
So these people need to, whenever they look at either Metanetta or they look at any Sumerians, they got to know what they're looking at. Then they got to be able to recognize, because it's not just like you looking at a text and then you're reading it from right to left, up or down. You just look at you have to know, if you see Anuna and then you look at Ki, you'll know that it's talking about a city or something pertaining to geography when you see it either in the preposition or as a post-determinative. These are signs that you see in the language. You don't see it in the English transliteration. It's like if you say, if you just say, all right, give me an example. You say Enki. You'll see in the Sumerian text, you'll see this thing that looks like a little star. And then you'll know who it's talking about. But if you don't know what that star represents before that name, you won't even know who it's talking about. And that star is a dingir. And that dingir represented is always used in the preposition to determine if it's talking about a deity, a star, a planet, or a sun. And that's important when you're just going through the basic fundamentals of Sumerian language. But that's another story. Like I said, I'm just doing my part to try to help this thing along. And like I said, it's gonna get even more intense as we go on in the upcoming years. And this is just a hobby that I do. I'm living my life and enjoying it. Got the house and got my sweetheart right here sleep. And I'm just enjoying life. But at the same time, I just want to do my part to help anyone not fall into the same rabbit hole that many of us fell in, that stagnated, some of the growth of these great young minds who were sharp as needles. Them brothers were sharp who used to teach Nuwaupian doctrine.
Yeah.
Sharp as needles, man. And then York, took advantage of that. And a lot of them guys just wasted. And now, some of them went to their grave with this nonsense. And I'm just trying to help people say, no, do not go down that road. And here's why. And you'll see the evidence that knocks his stuff out the window.
There's some bright stars that came up out of there, too.
Mm-hmm.
In the community. A lot of people don't. There's a lot of people who don't know that some of the people that they listen to or, look to for information came up out of there, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A whole lot. But, it continues. So I'm just, like I said, thanks, Zaire. I'm just doing my part. I'm just trying to help. I don't get paid for it. And to be honest with you, I don't even want to get paid.
Right.
It's from the heart. This is what I do from the heart. I miss sleep, lose days at work, get my girl pissed off at me because I'm not coming to bed. But this is what you do when you're committed.
Well, yeah, you know, I'll let you, you know, go ahead and take care of your business, man.
Yeah, I gotta take it to work.
I'm gonna get up out of here myself, but I appreciate you coming through, and you know, I have you back. You'll be back.
All right, man.
Maybe next time I have you and Tar on. I like doing the bills with you and Tar Noon at the same time.
Yeah, Tar be making me laugh. That was a funny. Yeah, dude be making me laugh. That's my man. Yeah. Listen, one last thing, Chuck. Have you seen the new place in Brooklyn? Yeah, man. Yeah, open. I seen it. It's just they just doing their best to try to keep that whole Tamaray thing alive. So, you know, it's all good. That's their thing. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. Go for your thing. But you know, when you start spitting that fake knowledge, you know, you got to be taken to task, and that's where I'm coming in.
Yeah.
All right,
definitely. Brother. All right, man. Peace.
All right, man. Peace, man.
Yep. All right, y'all. You already know what time it is. Another 6 Dynasty face-to-face. You know, I did 2 shows today. I said I was going to do 3. My light went out. The battery is dead. All right? But I'll be back on tomorrow on here, as well as on 6 Dynasty Media Reloaded. And I'll possibly do something on 6 Dynasty Media too, so just be looking for the notifications. Matter of fact, I know I'm going live on 6 Dynasty Media too. Shout out to my moderators. Shout out to shout out to Zaire. Shout out to Nikki Justice for hanging in there all night with me. Rahabak to the family. You silly brother Malik. Yeah, shout out to everybody though. Shout out to all y'all that been rocking with us all night, all day. Shout out to everybody that subscribe to all 4 platforms that we running out now. Like I said, I'm not creating no more channels. I'm gonna rock with those 4 for right now. All the other channel accounts, like I said, I got 7. All the other 3, I'm gonna just leave them like dormant for right now. All right, so yeah, peace, Fix Roy. I know you over there in the UK checking us out. Shout out to you. Yeah. Other than that, family, another one in the books, man. Chuck Morgan came through and did what he always do. Amadi, I got them trees. If you come to Cali, get you the Kundalini straight. I'll be out west in at the beginning of the year. I'm supposed to be moving out west. That's why I'm going out there. I'm going out there to look some things over before I move out that way. So yeah, I'll be like about 4 hours from LA. Yep. But all right then, family. Shout out to y'all. Thanks for coming through. Peace.
Since I'm living it. Lost the Vita was sir, you and your people. My gang cop heavy like Bossy and Epicino.